I know a lot of you are wondering why I would use a word such as cult for this broadcast tonight. Well, I'm going to try and justify that a little bit. What I used to describe it more on why I've chosen that word and what we can potentially, as a community, learn from it. That is looking at the past, checking the present, and considering the future. And what it means for us in our pursuit of flavour, good quality flavour, and good whiskey experiences. I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Thursday night again. Welcome to another vPub. Looking forward to hanging out with you and having a little bit of um, whiskey time, a little bit of quiet whiskey time. I want to first say thank you to everybody who sent me really concerned messages over the course of the last week. It was brilliant. Thanks so much. Because I mentioned that my daughter wasn't well, she was COVID positive last week. Actually, she tested negative the very next day, actually on the Friday, I think, or even maybe later that night. And the rest of us managed to escape this time. I had a wee bit of some congestion and things. I was testing, all negative. So it's either false negatives and I got away really, really lightly, or I've just had a wee minor head cold for a day or two. But I was right as rain by the weekend. I was absolutely fine. I was just feeling it on Thursday night. And I'm fine tonight. Thank you so much for your concern. I need to be careful about saying I'm poorly, unless I really genuinely am poorly. But it was just a wee head cold. Thanks to everybody. Everybody was fine. We had to cancel a trip, but we managed to make a shorter trip, a much more local trip. We went up to Lowlands side, up to the Highlands, the Trossachs, for a couple of days. We still managed to get a family break, and it was really quite cool to be able to do that. It's nice to welcome you here tonight. I hope that you're all in good, rude health as well. Greg's Whiskey Guide. I'm just going to highlight your comment because I think it's a good one to kick off with, buddy. But before we get into answering your question, what this topic is about tonight, and kind of just trying to define it a little bit, I think the best thing to do is for me to try, since it's only me, is to try and keep it a bit neat tonight and get into the chat to welcome you all as soon as possible. But before I do that, I want to say thanks very much to everybody for last week. It was a super popular topic last week, and that's strange. I hoped it was popular because of what we were doing, but the way I titled it, Just Where Now, it was a little bit kind of nebulous, a little bit vague, and I wasn't sure if a lot of people would get the idea of what we're actually doing. But that video, last week's vPub, is about 7,000 views now, which is a really successful vPub to pick up that many views in the first 6-7 days. So it's fantastic. Thank you all for participating in it. But a big, huge thanks to Jim, to Shane, and to Jeff and their 3 channels for coming along and supporting with their trust as well. And a huge thanks to all of you who went along after the vPub last week and gave them a sub as well. I know that took trust on your part, trust in what I was talking about, them being valuable contributors to the whiskey space, to Whiskey Tube, and our community. They seem to have all gotten a wee spike out of in followers, and that I know means a lot to them. Jeff Whiskey, specifically Jeff Whiskey, he's struggling to get to that 1,000 subscriber point, where YouTube opens up a lot of its wee box of tools. Monetization not being the smallest part of that. It gives Jeff a lot more options. Thank you to everybody. So before I go into all of that, before I go into talking about a certain anniversary that's happening tomorrow, it's nothing to do with this channel for a change. I'm going to jump into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk, dedicated barflies. I hope you're all doing very, very well. Let's start here. Ben Demon Hunter is in. Slanchavaroy, good to see you, Ben. Wonderful to welcome you in. And Hells, it's Wednesday here saying evening, Roy. Hope you had a good break. It was terrific. We got a good spell of weather where, it wasn't particularly bright or sunny or colourful, but it was calm and it was peaceful. Choose whatever word you want, Aquavite, says Jimmy Legg. We are the most open minded group in the world. Change days, Jimmy, right? We try to be open minded. I think it's human nature to kind of close our minds, especially maybe in my experience as I get a wee bit older. So I'm always just trying to kind of force it and stay open minded and realize that my brain is trying to work against me a wee bit. My kids are pretty good at it, if I'm honest. They're good at keeping my brain and mind working a wee bit differently, I think. Don McCausland is saying good evening to you, good sir. Good evening to you, Don. Fraser Thistle and Petehead Frank is here. Karsten, Andy C. Jeff Whiskey is in tonight. Fantastic, Jeff. Good to see you. Jerry Miller is saying hello, Roy. Like any good cultist, I'm buying whatever you're selling. Well, I think that we should all be wary of everyone out there on the interweb. And there's something I'm going to talk about in a wee minute that's coming out with this anniversary tomorrow, which is a really good example of that, Jerry. I hope you enjoy it. Max Kreitner is saying, good evening, buddy. Good evening to you, Max. I thought you were on the Loch Lomond Glen Scotia group tasting tonight. Am I not seeing lots of messages getting posted from you of all the tasty whiskies that you're enjoying? If you're just dropping in to say hello, fantastic, Max, and I hope you have a great night, buddy. Hope you're well. Celtic Drama is here. Good to see you, Gary. It's always nice to welcome you in, fella. I hope you're keeping well. First Phil Whiskey's here. Fantastic, Phil. Wonderful to see you, buddy, all the way from New Zealand. And what content the guy is putting out over on WhiskeyTube. I know that he's probably under pressure to put more and more content out because it's of such a high standard, but quality over quality. Sorry, quality over quantity. Always. Julian Rickman is here as well, saying Aquavita Evening Barflies. Good to know you're feeling better. Thank you, Julian. I definitely am. And Whiskey Volt's here as well. Fantastic. How are we your cult, Aquavita? Absolutely. Absolutely and absolutely not. I think that there's different ways to define cult, and I think we'll get into it in a minute, but you'll see that despite the thumbnail I've chosen to use tonight for this vPub, that's actually not the context I'm after. Whiskey Weekend Drama is here. Harrow, good to see you. John Paul van der Hoeven is here. Good to see you. It's not John Paul, is it? It's Jan Paul. I always make that mistake, but it's always good to welcome you, and I hope you don't mind me butchering your name from time to time. Peter Box is here. Peter, always a pleasure to welcome you. And my friend, and Jonathan Flowers, my friend in Canada, is celebrating being a member of the Aquavita Barflies for 16 months, saying hello, all you amazing barflies, as is Ethan Sterner. Ethan, that might be the first time I've mentioned your name. And he's saying, cheers, Roy. And he's been a Barfly member for 7 months. Barflies are people who press the join button on desktop and on Android. If you're watching on iOS, they still don't have the join button there, but it's on your desktop and things like that. And for $1.99 a month of whatever currency, wherever you are, you keep the vPub ad free. Isn't that nice? It means that you never need to sit through ads, especially if you're breaking it up into chunks to watch it. Something that I enjoy on YouTube, not having to sit through ads. And the other thing is, it gets you lots of whiskey themed emoji and things like that to cover up the comments underneath and the live chat that I'm interacting with on YouTube tonight. Ethan, Jonathan, wonderful to see you both. Thanks for being here and thanks for supporting me as a barfly. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, glad your daughter is fine, Roy. She is, Greg. Thank you very, very much. And Gav is saying, hello, Roy. Gav's Drams, fantastic to see you, buddy. Another YouTuber putting out great content over there in Edinburgh. I think you're Edinburgh, Gav, if I remember well. We got to meet at the end of last year. Bruno Martins in Portugal. Good to see you, Bruno. Gian, that's Gianluigi, I think his name is, from Dramming Around. He's saying, hi, everyone, and hi, Aquavita. Glad that everything is fine. Trying to catch this one live. I hope you and your other half are doing very, very well. And I hope you're up to lots of adventures and distillery visits and sharing it through the Dramming Around social feeds, buddy. It's always nice to welcome you in. Petehead Frank is here saying, evening, Roy. Always good to see you in your own vPub. Thank you, Frank. Once upon a time, you were here with me. Rob Smith is here saying, hello, barflies. And Justin Wan is saying, good evening, Roy. Slanchava to good health. Yeah, Justin, it is quite appropriate to say Slanchava when you're wishing someone good health. Absolutely. Alan Newland is celebrating being a barfly member for 11 months. It's not a Thursday without a vPub. Thanks, Alan, and thanks for your support in the Aquavita Barflies. I feel like that's another new name that I've only mentioned for the first time tonight. And Ben Marnock is here. Ben, good to see you, saying greetings from England. But you're from just east of me. And saying with the excise man tonight. Oh, okay. Visiting Filey Bay tomorrow. Fantastic. Filey Bay. Interesting wee distillery down there in England. And potentially something that could garner a bit of a cult following in the future. Whiskey Central Sheila is in tonight, and she's joined. I thought you were always a barfly, Sheila. It's wonderful to have you. I hope you're doing well, and it's nice to welcome you tonight. Sheila, I've not spoken to you in a wee while. I'm missing you. I hope you're keeping well. Daniel Williams is a member for celebrating being a member for 25 months. Evening Roy, 25 months already. Terrific stuff. And I think Jimmy Jazz has been gifting Aquavite memberships. Thank you, Jimmy, you superstar. And Gordon Fraser, who's been a member for a year, is saying happy anniversary. Aye, we'll get to that in just a moment, Gordon. I think I missed a wee super chat. I don't want to miss it. It's from Highland Hamish. My pal Hamish up north. Good to see you, Hamish. Super excited to have signed up today for the first trip to Islay in April as one of the magnificent Max 7 making the trip. That's going to be absolutely terrific. Are you going with Justin and the team then? Justin was picking my brains for some information, and it depends on when that message comes in if I can get time to sit down and reply. But the last couple of weeks it's just been absolutely bonkers. So I know I owe Justin a bit of a response, but Hamish, perhaps if you're going, we might have somebody who's an attuned guide going along with them. Anyway, before I get on to the theme tonight, let's talk about tomorrow. It's a big deal, and one of the reasons I've had a busy time both sides of this kind of break. And tomorrow is, well, it was 1 year ago tonight that I made an announcement that after the vPub that very night, that a new website was going to go live, a project that we'd been working on the months up to that vPub. And it was called Dramface. The Dramface project took a lot of effort, a lot of resource, a lot of people were involved. We put a lot of effort into this thing, and we just hoped that it would be something that would be interesting to you, to people who read content as well as watch videos and whiskey tube and things like that, but people who like to fortify their whiskey knowledge, their consumption, for people that like to kind of join others on a journey to meander through whiskey, to share stories about whiskey, all of these things. That's why dramface.com was built. It's essentially at its core a review site, but it also does features and it shares industry news. And it's much more than just a review. There's a score around the review, of course there is, but there's always a human story. There's a preamble, a build up to it. There's always context given, much more than just a score. That launched on the 17th of February in 2022, and you guys took to it very, very quickly. I was so grateful to you, so grateful for the positive feedback. It gave us a really nice spike, a really nice injection of adrenaline right at the get-go, right at the beginning. Super to see. Well, we've been putting out daily content now. Sometimes at the beginning it was 7 days a week, but then we settled into a rhythm of a Monday to Friday. Every weekday we put out content on Dramface. There's over 20 people involved now in the writing team, and there's almost 30 people involved across the whole team altogether. Now, we're all doing it part-time. We're all doing it for fun. We're all doing it to build something that's bigger than us. All of these things. But we've managed to put out that content now for a year. So I want to start off tonight by saying thank you to the community that supported that. Thank you to everybody that's made it grow and grow and grow organically. There's no hype. There's no clickbait behind Dramface. There's no sponsorship. There's no ads. There's no partnerships. There's no free bottles. There's no agreements. It's all us independently as enthusiasts writing about the stuff that we want to write about. Thank you so much for making it a success. But more than anything, thanks to all of the team, thanks to the founding team, the original core founding team, thanks to the people that's come along and has been inspired by it since, thanks to the people that tirelessly not just write the content, which is huge amounts of effort, but put the work in behind the scenes to keep it working and ticking over, whether it's admin, whether it's building the website, like our guys have been doing, like Rob is burning the candle at both ends right now to do some enhancements for tomorrow. I'll tell you more about that in a second. Then we've got Graham in social media. We've got Bea and Scotty doing the sub-editing side of things. We've got just so many people involved in keeping that thing going. I think today, more importantly than ever, whiskey is more complex than it's ever been. I really believe that. It's more wonderful, it's more varied, we've got more choice, but there's so many dynamics in whiskey right now. And with that added choice, It's really quite a difficult place to navigate. You don't need to navigate it alone. No one in Dramface is navigating it alone because we're all doing it as a team. That's how we do this thing independently of our own free will and do it as in a kind of crowdsourced community fashion. Thank you all for a year's worth of effort. I know it's not easy. Thank you, everyone. Happy birthday, Dramface. Tomorrow, we'll put out some enhancements and tweaks to the website. It's maybe not Dramface 2.0, but it's maybe Dramface 1.1 or something, I suppose. Just to kind of enhance things a little bit and make it something that you can enjoy a wee bit more in terms of navigation, maybe interact with us a wee bit more. So look for some more tweaks and enhancements to the website tomorrow night. You might notice a few differences around the website. We're also going to do quite an interesting release tomorrow. The review is not going to be a typical review. Look out for that. You might find it interesting. Trust us on it and run with it and tell us what you think in the comments. And we'll also share with you a stats page. So we don't need to share these stats. We don't need to share how poorly we're doing, and we don't need to show off if we're doing great things. I think we're doing somewhere in between. Generally, Dramface has been super, super well received. But we want to tell you, we want to share it with you because the people that keep Dramface going are members. They sign up for $3.99 a month. For that $3.99, what do they get? Well, nothing, because the content is free. They sign up because they believe in it. They're getting 20 plus articles every month with no ads, no sponsorship, as I say, for $3.99. That's less than the price of a magazine. Something that you can read in your morning commute or over your morning coffee, or something that you can relax with later in the day over a dram. I guarantee you there's going to be something of interest in every single post that's shared. I love it. I'm even, dare I say, I even take pride in it. It's been amazing. Thanks to everybody. Okay. Let's go on to our topic tonight. I see Rob Halford's in tonight. Rob, you star. I know your eyes will be red, buddy. I know you've been working like a trooper. No doubt that Graham will be in as well. No doubt some of the other team will be in hanging out tonight as well. Hopefully getting some downtime. Now, there is a name I have not seen in a long time. Christina Van Ness. Christina, how are you doing? I hope you're doing very well. I hope Lance is doing very well too. It's amazing to see your face and hear. I missed you when I was over in Texas last year. You weren't there. I hope that you might have been there. But regardless of where you are, I hope you're doing well. And it's nice to welcome you back in the vPub. Justin Wan is saying, Dramface, you deserve to take pride in it. Thank you very much, Justin. And I'm glad you're enjoying it too. You could do a Dramface app. I think it would be good. So everything's just a question of price and investment, isn't it, Lawrence? But it is a good idea. The website itself is kind of, it's very good on mobile. I think we're always trying to make it a wee bit better. It does work very well on mobile. So I wonder how much of you never know, we're building things. And that data, as it builds and builds and builds going forward, you never know what you're going to be able to turn it into in the future. Graham Brown is in here and he's saying, happy birthday, Dramface. Thanks again for the opportunity to be part of the team Aquaviti. Graham, I'm very grateful to you and everybody else that makes it not only possible, but work pretty well. You're all very good in what you do. And Christina is saying, hey, Roy, I had to come in for a cult meeting. Of course you did. Of course you did. Being a member of the Ardbeg cult for the whiskey tribe, right? Aha. There is that connotation, there is that idea. And like I say, Christina, I didn't help when the thumbnail that I used tonight suggested that very thing. But if we're going to talk about cult whiskies, it's kind of difficult to visualize it. And I wanted something with a wee bit of impact. Anyway, thanks to everyone. Welcome in. I am sipping somewhat of a cult whiskey. I think it deserves to be a cult whiskey. And I'll tell you the way that I'm going to break this up tonight. To answer Greg's question, he said, hi, Ryan, everyone. What's the idea tonight? Talk about Brora, Port Ellen, Rosebank, St. Magdalene, Karazawa, and Rare Springbank. Or Glenfarclas, Lagavulin, or new ones like Daffmill. So here's what I'm going to do. First, I think what I need to do is define the cult word. For me, and if you look at the etymology of the word cult, right, it's comes from, I believe, Latin for cultus. I had to look this up, of course, but so all those kind of cult words like cultivate, potentially culture, and all of these things come from that same root. And cult comes from that as well. In the modern context, you could look at it in some negative ways or some ominous ways, religious cults and these kind of things. But what I'm actually talking about tonight is when something reaches a status that it's transcended its simple brand, it's transcended the product, it's actually become part of culture. So the first thing, I suppose the first thing that has to happen is that there has to be a product, there has to be a reputation built on the back of a product. And from that reputation, we have some form of love, adoration, or admiration for that product. And from then, that builds to a dedication towards that product. And at that point, it transcends what the product actually is, it transcends the brand, and it becomes much deeper than that. It becomes a product of culture, the culture of the thing, or the culture of the land, the region, the area, whatever it may be. And when you think about whiskey in that sense, so I'm not going to take this down the kind of music analogy and things like that. I'm not going down that road at all. Music always, music is more divisive than politics at times, I find. But I'm not going to go down that road. What I'm going to talk about is very much the context of whiskey. And if you think about it in that context, whiskey is absolutely very much a product of the land, a product of the people. You could argue whether it's a product for the people or not, that's a different thing altogether, but certainly it's a product of the people. There is no doubt that that is the case. As I miss a dram here, how can I miss a dram from Jimmy Legg? Potentially missed two, actually. Let me grab these before they slip off the screen. Have I been chatting so much, Jimmy, that I've missed your dram, my friend? Anyway, I've missed a dram also from Alistair Gray here. And Alistair is saying, Razor Dram for Aidan from Fib Whiskey, taken too soon. That's absolutely true. I noticed the social media. I never got to meet Aidan. I never knew what he'd created there. I came to the whole Fib Whiskey scene too late. I know they've been about the festival circuit recently, and I know that Aidan's been able to get around the circuit and distillery visits as well. I was desperately sad to hear of the loss, Alistair, and it's just yet another hardworking, passionate soul in whiskey that's been lost in recent times. Alistair, you're absolutely right. To Aidan, peace. Taken far too soon. Jimmy Legg is saying a year of Dramface and Christina. A great night already. I agree, Jimmy. It's good to celebrate all of these things. And Big Ed has also bought us a dram saying, congrats on your first year. Thank you, Big Ed. Thank you very, very much. It might be the first time even I've welcomed you in. But thanks to Jimmy. Thank you very much. And thank you to Big Ed for the drams. What I will say is that I do try to, it's difficult, it's can't be mashed together. I have to be careful. The aquaviti thing is me, just me. And I do that on my own and I please myself and I sit here every Thursday night and I get to share this wonderful space with you all. And it's an absolute privilege and I want to protect that as much as I can. Dramface is intended to be a much bigger thing. It's intended to be something it can only exist when it's put together and built by a team. And its power is in the fact that it does harvest so many opinions constantly, all the time. Not just in the articles and things, but in the comment section underneath. But Big Ed, I hope you're enjoying Dramface, and thank you very much for your dram. And Jimmy, thanks for pointing out the need to celebrate when these two things happen at the same time. Cheers. So that's how I've defined cult or cult whiskies. And what it allows us to do in the context of whiskey is kind of look into the past a wee bit and see if we consider what a cult whiskey is today and look at its history and consider how did it become a product that's got some kind of cult following. Where is it today? What does that mean for us? And then how can we kind of look to the future and try and fathom what distilleries could potentially follow a similar path? But it's not just about chat or brand or marketing, or it's got to be about genuine reputation. More than anything, then, it has to be founded in a product of quality. Good quality, yes, But I think in order to reach a cult status, we need to be talking about potentially, arguably, exceptional quality. That is how it's gone through that process of admiration, building reputation and dedication, and of course becoming a product that becomes part of some place or somebody or some body of community or people's culture. There has to be something that's very, very good. There is no doubt that the cult whiskies I'm going to share with you tonight, whether it's ones that I buy or not, have been birthed from that idea. No doubt at all. I'm going to go through regions tonight because I think it's the easiest way to do it. I quite enjoyed kind of going through regions a couple of vPubs ago. It was an easy way to break things down because when you start talking about these things, you realize that I'm going to be under pressure to cut down the number of bottles I'm talking about, the number of whiskies I'm talking about. So I'll be talking about regions, and then what I'll do is I'll hold up something that is a cult whiskey today, and then talk about what I think is going to come behind it to potentially replace it. Why would we want to replace something that's loved, that has a dedicated following, that's admired? Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing in whiskey today is as soon as something reaches anything that looks like it might be cult status, and I've got some interesting examples here, it's often pushed or taken away from us. Now, it wasn't our thing in the first place. I understand that whiskey is a business and we don't own the whiskey. We don't have any right to dictate what happens to any whiskey producer, any brand, any malt, any distillery, anything. We don't. But consider the relationship that any successful business needs. You know, it needs a product and it needs a customer. And it needs a way to make that product in order to make a margin. And it needs to keep the customer happy in order to keep reselling that product. Why is that so often thrown in the trash? Why is it always so often so, okay, we're doing really well with this customers, these customers, these customers, these, we're getting bigger. Wow, thank you, customers, thank you, customers. And then it reaches a point and they say, right, we're going to shut you down now. We've had enough of your business. We're going to move over our business over here. Now it's the way of things. It's the nature. It's the big machine. It's the corporate, growth strategies and shareholders and it's fantastic, great, wonderful. Can I remind you that we are in many ways talking about a product of the land and a product of the people? You could argue even that it bridges that it's not just a product, it's actually an art form in its own right. That it's more than just something to generate profit. And that the companies, whether they are corporate or independents, whether they're single, sole owners, or whether they're big multinationals, it doesn't matter right now when you talk about so many products right across the world, you're not talking about just brands and products. You're often talking about products of people and of land, people, things of with a sense of place, to quote Dave Broom's most recent book. You're talking about something that runs deeper, and you're just mere guardians right now. I think it's a bigger deal. I talked about a couple of weeks ago or in last week how we're not just taking the money that's available on the table in whiskey right now. What we're actually doing is stealing from whiskey's future. It's what I believe. I'm not going to be negative about this tonight, but I'm going to hold up some examples and share them with you. Rob Smith is saying, for me and my friends, Edredart is a cult whiskey. Good call, Rob. And especially if you've got a group of friends coming together, it means so much more because it's a thing that's connecting you as a group. It's more than just somebody sitting down and saying, aye, this is nice whiskey. There's so much more depth to whiskey, so much more. Glenn Duncan is saying cults and cultures evolves and devolves. Springbank was a cult distillery years ago, but less so now. Brora and Port Ellen continue to evolve for me. So what we're talking about there is two completely different things, I think, Brora and Port Ellen and Springbank, and yet they grew from the same root. I think hopefully we're going to get a chance to cover that tonight. Glenn, Dave Evans is saying, just bought a Daftmill Milano Festival release for €250, and my wife called me a cult. Yeah, drinking the Kool-Aid. I can understand that. €250 for, no doubt it would be a smashing Daftmill. It's a scarcity issue there, and Daftmill is very much something that we could be talking about in the context of cult. And Brian is saying, over here in the States, Buffalo Trace has a scary cult following. Yeah, I was shocked to see in Texas one year, as far back as 2018, that bog standard Buffalo Trace was on allocation and sold behind the customer service desk. They couldn't even put it out on the shelf. Incredible scenes. And Blair Stevenson is saying there's a small cult of us in love with Brave Al. It doesn't matter. I mean, Brave Al's a pretty new distillery, right, Blair? It doesn't really matter when the thing comes along. If it generates admiration and dedication and love in you, then why can it not be a cult whiskey? Okay, let's give me, when I think cult whiskey, I'm going to hold up a bottle. I have one left. It's sealed. It's not going to be opened tonight, but it is going to be opened at some point in the future, despite the value of this thing going up fairly regularly. Um, I, I, I've gone through two, three, four bottles of this, and I do genuinely love and enjoy this whiskey. But there's a couple of things that I want to talk about tonight that, I think that this has been ruined. It's been absolutely ruined. I'm going to give it a wee polish. Yeah, because it's sturdy, it's dusty. This is a cult whiskey. And I think that the rest of the whiskies that we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to continually be thinking back to this bottle I'm going to hold up to you now. This is a bottle that has discontinued. And this was a bottle that was only available as an official release through this expression, very few others, and occasionally through independent bottlers. But this is a bottle of Mortlach. This is a flora and fauna expression, 16 years old, 43% ABV. I'm going to hold this bottle up long enough because I find that when I hold these bottles up, it's very helpful to me, as long as the camera focuses so you can see it. It's very helpful to me when I am doing the chapter markers at the end of the video. So when we talk about this whiskey, why was this a cult whiskey? Well, we have to go back to a time when malt whiskey was just drank locally, more or less. And if it did go further than kind of local parishes and regions and things, remember it was being made for blends. So if it went further as a single malt, it would very rarely make it off or outside of the United Kingdom. It was consumed domestically as a malt whiskey. Malts were not really a thing. We know the story up until the 1960s when Glenfiddich famously started to market malts as pure malt whiskey. It was always around before that, but in very small quantities. And it was exported, but again in very small quantities. It wasn't really a known product. Concept of a single malt is something that's come along more or less in my lifetime. So let's go back to before that. The people that were enjoying Mortlach knew that this was a distinctive malt whiskey. They didn't care that it was malt whiskey, and they didn't even want to differentiate between a blend that they could buy and something that they could source locally from their local distillery. It was just whiskey to them. Just whiskey. One whiskey was a product of a single distillery, a Mortlach here, and the other stuff was a product of multiple distilleries, including grain whiskey and things. Mortlach built a reputation based on where it was made. That distillery in Dufton, and eventually, I don't know when it started to be called the Beast of Dufton. I don't know when that idea came along, but that Beast of Dufton refers to a distinctive profile that exists in Mortlach. It's the way that it's made. It's down to the distillation regime, which is greater. It's 2 point, I don't know what it is at Mortlach, whether it's Mortlach's 2.41 or is it Springbank? No, Springbank's 2.8. It's somewhere between, because the distillation regime, it's between 2 and 3 times distillation. So it's distilled a wee bit differently, but that's not where it gets its weight from. It gets its weight from, it's believed, the way it's condensed. So it's a big, meaty whiskey. People talk about meaty notes in a Mortlach. It can be quite a drink. Even at 43%, this is a robust and bold whiskey. Terrific stuff. This is coloured, this is chill filtered. We believe it doesn't say anything on a bottle, so we assume that that's the case. And yet, I paid £200 for this bottle as much as 3 years ago. I've been gifted this bottle. I remember Eric Waite gifting me a bottle of this. Thank you, Eric, you star. Long since enjoyed and shared. And there was 1 or 2 bottles that I was buying myself before that. This is kept now for a special day because this is probably somewhere in the order of 250. £300, 300 plus. I don't know what you would have to pay for a bottle of this now, but it's not worth that now. It's not worth that. So don't be running out and buying this because Roy said he enjoyed a bottle of Mortlach Flora and Fauna. This I'm holding up to you tonight. It's a nostalgic product to me, and it's something that I became part of the cult club for a short amount of time. I'm glad I've got this bottle here, but if it finished, if I needed another one, a replacement, I wouldn't be going out and spending £300 on it. It's just the whiskey inside the bottle, like so many others out there, simply can't live up to that price, and I'm here to drink and enjoy the whiskies. So what did the producer do now that this has got a reputation, this has got admiration and dedication out there in the community. This is a loved whiskey. They discontinue it and they bring out a range of products that is ridiculously overpriced. Is it successful? Is it hell? It sits on the shelf. They brought out a non-age statement. They brought out a 16-year-old. Sorry, no, they didn't. They brought out an 18-year-old to replace the 16-year-old. And these were all at oddball low ABVs. That's not a big deal in itself, but it was the pricing. That 18-year-old came out at something like £160. And I remember seeing it for years in global travel retail, years on retail shelves, just collecting dust. Same for the non-age statement one. Even the one that was affordable was a pale imitation of what built the reputation and made Mortlach into a cult product. A complete mess. And look at the most recent release from Diageo from Mortlach, from the special releases. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds for a non-age statement, and they're just trading on the idea that it's Mortlach. Every retail store that I've been in that stocks the special releases has still got that Mortlach sitting on the shelf. Well, I just don't understand. Just don't understand. The reputation can only be built if people are buying it, opening it, drinking it, and talking about it and speaking about it positively. What's happening now with collectible whiskies, whiskies that's priced for certain markets, whiskies that are going to stay sealed, whiskies that are going to be bought by people with much, much deeper pockets than I have, unfortunately, and they don't talk about it with their friends. They don't bang on about it online like I do. It's taken out of the hands of the people and into the hands of some other people, and it changes the whole dynamic. And I believe, I don't know if you agree with me, when that happens, when that seesaw tips, it's no longer a cult product. It was once a cult product, but it's moved on, it's been pushed on, or it's been taken away. Don't know if you would agree with that. I'm going to hold up another one. We're clearly in the region of Speyside here. So while I'm at it, let's talk about a cult product that I don't believe is any longer a cult product. Now, you might remember that last week, this is the same bottle. I've never had a Macallan on the shelf. I've not had a Macallan here for years. And I managed to find a way to use a bottle of Macallan 2 weeks in a row on the vPub, right? But last week, we put this Macallan up against a Speyburn 15 that's cheaper than this 12-year-old. It's better presented, it's natural, it's unchill filtered, it's natural colour. This is natural colour, but it is chill filtered and at 40% ABV. Very weak. And also put it up against something that was much, much, much cheaper. I put it up against the Thompson Brothers 6-year-old TB BSW, a blended Scotch whisky, £33.95 I paid for that whisky. And the margin, the difference in enjoyment across all three were so, so close, except, with the exception of the channels that joined on the night, placed the Speyburn way ahead of this and the blend, understandably so. Fully natural product, full on mouthfeel, everything. Arguably that Speyburn plays, sometimes to me, a little bit like a Mortlach, not least down to the warm tub distillation, I'm sure. Condensation, sorry, I'm sure. Macallan are nowhere where they used to be. Just my belief. There was a time that Macallan was a cult whisky, make no doubt. In the 70s, they started to advertise, they started to brand, they started to upscale, they started to distribute, they started to market widely, and they've done a fantastic job of building a brand. But I don't think that this qualifies as a cult whisky in today's context. Macallan, and there's no other ways about it, this is not a criticism of the quality. It is a criticism of the quality of the presentation, but the liquid that's made there, that is not a criticism of. I haven't tasted anything from the new distillery yet, of course, but Macallan still make good whiskey. They still release good whiskey, but they present it in a way that's weak, oftentimes, and it's always, without exception, far, far too expensive. It is no longer a cult whiskey. I've got some other Speysiders that I suggest either are already or could be in the future. That's why when you say whiskey is a business, I always laugh. True whiskey is not a business. It's a passion shared between the people that make it and the people that love it. I think that's a great way of summarizing it. Whiskey is fantastic at bringing people together. It's fantastic at making us reflect. It's fantastic of just being an analogy for life. In order for it to endure today, because of the boom and bust in the history of whiskey, it has to be rendered into some form of business. But that doesn't mean, just look at Springbank, is that guy, that torchbearer that's always been there, the way that they do things. They're making money. They're making lots of money. But they're doing it ethically. And they're doing it with a sense of guardianship. And I hope that as the generations pass and the ownership changes and the people at the top changes, I hope that that continues. I hope that that endures. Why are there not more companies taking more notes out of the Springbank playbook? Jimmy, thank you very much for your drama again. That's the second one you've brought me tonight, my friend. Thank you. And I also picked up a very lovely message from you, a direct message before we went live tonight. I'll reply to that tomorrow. Thank you for thinking about me, my friend. Cheers. Hmm. So what about, Ethan is saying, can you be in a blended malt cult? So much value there. Absolutely, why not? I don't think it will ever build into a cult. I think the intrinsic thing about blended malts is that they, despite this idea that they're bringing things together in order to make a more consistent product, right now what we're seeing is a lot of kind of flash and gone. There's nothing enduring about the blended malts that we're seeing. We've started to see that change. Compass Box have been bringing out products for a long time. Douglas Laing's remarkable regional malts, some consistency in the makeup there. You could say that together with the really cool branding from Compass Box and Douglas Laing and other brands that's out there, that it has the ability to build something towards having a dedicated following, admiration, and things like that. Whether it can bleed through and become a cultural phenomenon and actually attract the concept or the consideration of a cult, I'm not sure. But you and I agree, Ethan, this year and going forward, blended malts are going to become a more and more exciting prospect for people that are interested in flavour. Daniel Williams is saying, you've got to get your investments worth from that Macallan, more vPubs, and the cost is justified. That's right, and I buy the Macallan, so you guys don't have to. By the way, if I bought that Macallan and it was absolutely stunning and gorgeous in any way, regardless of how it's presented in the bottle, I would share that with you. And I would caveat and contextualise the purchase. But it's not. It's bang average. And there's hundreds of bottles out there that can just take it to the cleaners and still give you money to buy something else, to save you money, whatever it is. Alistair Gray saying Aqua Vitae Loch Lomond cult. I think there's an argument for Loch Lomond. I'll try and make it a wee bit later, but that's in the Highlands. That's quite a bit down the line. Blair Stevenson is saying last year's Campbeltown Loch was a fantastic blend. Absolutely. Campbeltown Loch, it's not going to appear tonight, but it's appeared in many vPubs, a really good blended malt, and they're quite happy to embrace that concept of batch variation, of course. Check out the Fable independent bottling brand. Definitely, I've got a cult potential in a good way. So there's a new brands that's coming out, but what they're probably going to potentially be doing there is leaning on the brand, and the thing has to be much more organic than that, I think, in order to be a cult. Graham Stewart, is Springbank headed down the Mortlach path? I remember raving about Springbank 20 years ago. Folk thought it too fusty. Now they all rave about the funk. Emperor's New Clothes, as everyone. Well, Graham, it looks like a new name. I think it might be the first time we've welcomed you in. No, I think there's quite a difference between Springbank and Mortlach. I think that Mortlach has been contrived and crowbarred and forced, whereas Springbank has continued to trip along doing exactly what they've been doing for decades. Now, I've not known any of these brands for decades. I've only been into whiskey for 18 years now. It's not really, I think the apprenticeship for whiskey is suggested to be 40 years, right? But from my experience in the years that I have been into whiskey, Springbank is something that did need investment. You did need to come into it. You did need to spend time with it. And then you understood it. And when you understood it and when it was running through your veins, it was never going to leave you. Macallan is different. Macallan is easy, accessible, smooth, luxurious, all of these kind of things. Whereas Springbank is exactly what it is, the best that it can be, whatever that may be. They are different, they're slightly different products. People can't buy Springbank just now, but it's not because of unethical practices, it's not because of cynicism, it's because of supply and demand. It's because they're just so successful. And Pierre Crouf is saying, well said, Roy, Mortlach is indeed very different from Springbank. Thanks, Pierre. I'm going to give you, we're still only in Speyside, I'm going to give you some contemplative bottles here. Things that I believe, which direction am I going to go in here? Things that I believe have great, great potential. Here's one right now that's already there. We're loving it. This is building up a steady reputation. You know that it's good already. I remember it being very spirit forward when it first arrived on the scenes I've seen a few years ago. The older expressions were much more interesting, if a bit more expensive. A theme with this producer, if we're honest. But their entry-level product makes a good call. This is a 13-year-old product from Speyside. It's fully natural, and we love the stuff. This is already building a reputation. I would say that we've got the reputation in place. We've got the admiration in place. Now they need to keep the dedication going, to have dedicated followers, to have people building up wee collections of this on the shelf, and then they have the potential of becoming one of those enthusiast cult whiskies, despite being from a fairly bulk producer, and that is from Bacardi, from Dewar's. This is Speyside's Craigellachie, another worm tub distilled product. I'm sure there's no coincidence there, but it doesn't have to be condensed in a worm tub. Did I keep saying distilled in a worm tub? No, a worm tub is just a way of condensing the spirit. It's a coil that runs through really cold water, usually kept outside, and it condenses the spirit very, very quickly. The alternative is the more modern and more efficient way to condense the spirit is in a column condenser, a shell and tube condenser. This is a worm tub condensed product, and that is supposed to give a bit more body to the spirit. I believe that this whiskey has a lot of body, and I believe that this is on its way to being something that has a dedicated following, not quite cult status yet. We have a dedicated following here in Speyside, but this is actually doing it back to front. This is a cult whiskey because of a character involved before the whiskey has earned its cult status yet. Let me explain what I mean by that. This is Glenallachie, obviously fronted by Billy Walker, doing great things. He's inherited a hell of a lot of whiskey there that's been distilled at Glenallachie. When he bought over that distillery, it came with a lot of stock. And in order to make that interesting whiskey right now, he's doing fantastic things with cask. This is my pick of their range for value flavour balance. This is the 8-year-old at 46%. If you enjoy their cask strength, a 10-year-old, which does vary in profile from batch to batch, this is very reminiscent of that. So it's difficult to define a cask style when you sip this. And that makes sense because there's virgin oak in this, there's sherry cask in this, there's all sorts in this to make this 8-year-old expression. But care not a jot about what the cask makeup is. This is rich, decadent, bold, bright, and vibrant whiskey. 8 years old, natural, good value stuff. But the cult hasn't even started yet. Billy Walker is the guy behind it. He brings a reputation with him. He brings admiration. He brings dedication with him. But that's people following a man, not a whiskey. In order for this whiskey to become cult whiskey, the spirit that Billy is making that comes forward has to then deliver. I've only tasted his 4-year-old peated that was released last year. I was cynical because of the price it came out at. I bought 1 dram. I've told the story before, and I thought I need to have a bottle of this. I never got a bottle of it. It's passed me by. It's gone. Fine. I'll wait patiently. Whiskey is teaching me to be patient. I think once the spirit, now it doesn't matter that it's going to be blended with the spirit that's previously been made at Glenallachie, or however it's going to be produced, once more of that spirit comes through, that's not made for efficiency, that's not made for an ingredient to go into blends, but it's made for malt's sake, for Glenallich's sake. This has the potential to transcend the cult following of a person and become cult following of a product. Here's another story that's very similar. Another Pernod Ricard purchase. This has just been purchased by Elixir Distillers, Tormore Distillery in Speyside. Like Glenallichie, famously undersold as a malt, famously ignored. Very unique flavour profile in this. One of the most distinctive Speyside distillates, I would say. I think it's one of the ones that, if it's a typical classic example of the style, I can sometimes pick it out blind even. This is a good one at 48% ABV, aged 16 years, and it tells us that it's non-chill filtered, although it doesn't mention anything about colouring. Now, that's good presentation for a Pernod Ricard product. Wonder if I could make that focus in on that wee message here. Non-chill filtered, look at that. It's an official bottling from Pernod Ricard, but it's very, very rare. There's a 14-year-old version as well, just as rare. Really difficult to get a hold of. Now that Elixir are in the driving seat here, they are now probably having to sift through all of the stock that they've inherited. What is good quality? What has been managed well? What is in good casks? What's just generic spirit? What's needing recast? They've got a hell of a job ahead of them. And then they'll be playing a similar game as Billy Walker has been doing with inherited spirit, while they modify and change the process to make a spirit that they want to be produced at Tormore. But again, we have the potential for the future for something to build there. But they need to start from square one of our little kind of reputation, admiration, dedication, then cult. They're right back at square one right now. Tormore has potential for the future. So there's optimism to be had here. There are things changing that could potentially be very interesting for us in the future. But right now, and I'm sure it's been mentioned in the chat, it must have been mentioned, there is already a distillery that is so close to transcending dedication into cult. So close. We know what it is, don't we? It's the guys that have been owned by Gordon MacPhail up in Elgin since 1993. So guys, you're 30 years in the game now. You must have fantastic product, right? You must be sharing fantastic product with us. And you are. This is a great example of that. This is their contrasts. Peat smoke, sherry cask matured expression, 46% ABV, distilled in 2012, bottled in 2021, fully natural, fantastic. Look at this. I've only had this a few months. Well, maybe that's not, maybe it's been more than that, but it's certainly been less than a year, and I'm loving this wee Speyside whiskey. It's really distinctive for us. It's not typical Speyside whiskey. We often talk about Benromac in the context of it being the spring bank of Speyside, and that's meant to be very, very positive. But it is quite funky, and it is quite dirty and of occasion, and it is a wee bit different. It's unique and it's to be loved, and yet their core range is frustratingly, even at 21 years old, chill filtered and at 43%. Same as their 10, same as their 15. It's successful and it's selling. I just think it could be better. In my experience, when you don't chill filter something like that Craig Ellichie I've been sipping to get things going tonight, it's such a lovely, little gorgeous body on the spirit. Everything is intact, and you're not left looking at the bottle wondering if you're missing anything. It's interesting to see Benromac releasing these products out there that are non-chill filtered to let us taste, and that's the ones I'm enjoying. The 10-year-old is sitting up there. It's still pretty full. It's just beyond the shoulder. I'm drinking it, but nah, it's got to be. This is the one. These are the ones I'm reaching for. The Cara Gold. The other contrast, the Peat Smoke series. The other peat smoke that's not sherry cask, sorry. Those are the ones I'm reaching for over the standard core range, because not because the printing on the label tells me that it's unchill filtered, no, because the enjoyment tells me that it's better. The more experienced you become at drinking whiskey, maybe you've got a better chance of drinking two whiskies next to each other and picking out the one that's chill filtered and the one that's not. But what's actually probably going to happen is, over the course of drinking dozens and dozens of whiskies over months and years, you build up an appreciation that the ones that you connect with most will tend to be natural whiskies that have that gorgeous texture and flavour still intact. This is my pick for Speyside. Benromac is my cult whiskey for Speyside. What say you? Pierre is saying there might be a cult developing on independence from Diageo distilleries. If so, I'm in. I leave the official bottlings already. Do you know what needs to happen there, Frank, in order for that to happen? If it hasn't already happened, so you won't hear me talking about any Diageo distilleries tonight. You won't hear me talking about Benrinnes. Love it. You won't hear me talking. I've spoken about Mortlach, of course. You won't hear me talking about Dilluin. You won't hear me talking about lots and lots of kind of those flora and fauna style distilleries that the Diageo workhorses, we sometimes call them, that are well catered for by the independent market. But what needs to happen there is that supply needs to continue. And if Diageo decide just to turn the tap off and not let those casks into the brokerage market, to not trade those casks, to not sell those casks, to keep the cash flow going because they're in rude health, because everybody's buying their special releases at inflated prices, everybody's paying through the nose for their Johnny Walkers and their luxury products and whatever it may be, if they're in very good health as a business, it's easy for them to turn the tap off. They don't need to sell their precious whiskey to anyone, and immediately a whole dynamic of Scotch whisky, independent bottling, cask trading, everything starts to crumble and fall apart. That's the power that's in Diageo's hands. Like when they decide not to sell their malt, their peated malt from Port Ellen to other distilleries anymore. No, we're just going to look after our own product. When they decide that they're not going to cooper other, I don't even know if Diageo do cooper anyone else's casks, but you get my point. As soon as Diageo decide to choke the growing whiskey scene around them, they have the power to do that. We as consumers have the power to deny them that. We perhaps need to rally and form a cult in order to do it. But it makes me nervous. The decisions that are being made at Diageo, the horizon that they are focusing on right now is terrifying. And it's heartbreaking for me because of the amount of distilleries within their stewardship that I genuinely love. The distilleries under Diageo's ownership are fantastic. The people that work there and the product they make, truly wonderful. The decisions it's made, once it leaves that cask and makes it into a bottle, it's mind-bendingly difficult to understand. Carson is saying Benromach Germany exclusive, 2011, bottle 2022, 48% saying he loves it. Karsten, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Ben with Whiskey with Molly is in saying, whilst I totally agree, every whiskey has its place. Benromach 10 and 15 were definitely gateway whiskies for me. Ben, I know. Buddy, I know. Do you think that if there was a 46% non-chill filtered that they wouldn't have been gateway whiskies for you? Do you think the 3% made the difference? If you went to Gordon MacPhail right now and said, why are you doing that at 43%? Why are you doing that 15-year-old at 43% and a 23, 21-year-old? Because they sell. They're selling. They sell really well. There's no argument to be had with that. I am a member of a cult, the geeky cult with the hood over his head that goes up there and he beats and beats and beats. He bangs his gums to the point of ad nauseum. People are sick of hearing me talking about colour and chill filtration. And yet I sit here in front of you every Thursday night and I sit quietly on my own and I go to tastings and festivals and whiskey club nights. And every single experience I have tells me that the better whiskies are the ones that are not messed with. They're not cosmetically altered by stripping oils and long chain fatty esters and not having colour added. These are the whiskies that I'm enjoying. And when I sit and talk to you guys, you're enjoying them too. Now, let's not be snobby about it. If a whiskey has to be at a price point, it needs to be at 40, 43% ABV. That means that it's going to have to, if it's malt whiskey we're talking about, it's barley, it's going to suffer from clouding there on the shelf at cool temperatures. It's going to need to be chill filtered. So you're absolutely right. My point tonight is that Benromach, I think, is going to struggle to make that transition because of the perception that it has out there from the aficionados, the people, the geeks, the people that are really invested, people that talk, the people that share, the people that help build a reputation, that build that admiration, that build it into a dedication, that eventually becomes something of a cult whiskey, a la Springbank. I need something else in my glass, don't I? A wee bit hoarse tonight. I'm maybe not fully recovered. Lee J's saying it's time for me. Work tomorrow. Thanks for joining in, Lee J. As always, Seamus really enjoying this night all, and cheers. And Helen is saying, so why do Whiskey Mondays count as a cult? All hail the cult leader, Peter Lee. It's a very small cult right now, but it's building. It's certainly building in reputation. Absolutely. What am I going to pour? Let's get on to our next region so I can get another whiskey. Let's finish our wee Craigellachie. That was delicious. And we'll move into the easiest one of all. Let's just move into Campbeltown. It's easy to talk about quickly. We've already talked about Springbank, already talked about what they've been able to achieve. Now, I'm going to pour this. I'm just going to pour it. This is getting close to the end, this little 18-year-old here. I managed to buy this at retail. I walked into a shop and bought this. Now I'm going back to maybe late 2021, 2022, early last year. I don't know. But I was lucky. It's just timing. Some of these bricks and mortar shops are not choosing to not sell them online, to put them on their shelf, maybe just one or two at a time. And I walked into the Goat, Valhalla's Goat in the West End of Glasgow. They only ballot this now, unfortunately, Springbanks, but at that time they were still putting them on the shelves. And there was one there, and I thought, I have to have it. Very grateful to have it too. Gorgeous whiskey, but there is no doubt that if we follow our kind of path of what makes a whiskey become a cult, Springbank have done it. They've built their reputation, closed the doors to everyone in the 1980s and said, we're not putting our destiny in the hands of anyone else anymore. We're going to look after our own brand and our own product. We're going to just make malt whiskey. We're going to employ people locally. We're going to do things ethically, and we're going to build a reputation. They did that. And of course, through building that reputation, they built that admiration, and that fortified into dedication, to the point that now, absolutely, if you have to pick one distillery in all of Scotland, it's Springbank. What does that mean now? Springbank have not been able to make enough to manage to meet demand for years. And since lockdown kicked in, that's become to a ridiculous level. It's at the detriment of the mental health of the people that work there. It's frustrating for the people who have been drinking Springbank for years before it developed this commodity investor honeypot type attraction. It's frustrating, and yet it remains a gorgeous torchbearer for the Scotch whisky industry generally. Anybody that wants to take their brand and make it just transcend the day-to-day grind of trying to shift pallets and cases, build slowly, build organically, build ethically, build with your customer in mind. And if you want to know what your customers of the future are going to be thinking, go to the enthusiasts and the geeks and the invested people right now. If you can please them, the rest of it's just going to take care of itself. If you have to convince them through packaging, through fancy messaging, through exciting new ranges and constantly changing things and not keeping a steady product, not a steady solid core range, you can never, now it might not be in your desire to be a cult ever or a cult product ever, but it's just one of these things that incidentally happens when things are done very, very well. And I don't think there's a better example than Springbank. And you know where I'm going to go, don't you? So flavorful, so fruity, so dense, so odd. Quite honestly, odd, but rich. Sour, even. On the back of, relatively speaking, fresh Craigellachie, this 18-year-old has, the maturity is there. There's a rich, God, the finish is gorgeous. It's so long. It's even, you could even argue once you transcend that kind of funky side, there's a decadence to this. There's a sense that you're able to enjoy something with real robust weight to it. So fruity, raspberry even, jammy. Still, it's on my palate right now. Fantastic. Whiskey Central is saying, never been happier to pay $100 for a 10-year-old whiskey. She's talking about Springbank, of course. I hope she is. And Rick Johnson is saying, Barflies, I would like your recommendation for your best whiskey pubs here in Glasgow. Rick, welcome to Glasgow. Maybe even one you'll be hanging out at this week. Rick, if you're not a member of the Barflies page on Facebook, that's a good place to go to figure out who's out in Glasgow this weekend. I would suggest don't miss the pot still. If you're a member of SMWS, it's just round the corner on Bath Street. There are other bars round about the city centre as well. Then you've got Ben Nevis out in the West End. You've got the Piper Bar, but please don't miss the Bon Accord out on North Street. It's about a 10-minute walk from the pot still, 12 minutes maybe, but it's worth it. Just maybe have something to eat in the Bon Accord in the afternoons, have some drams there, and then head into the city centre later. Rick, I hope you enjoy yourself. If I didn't have a fully packed weekend, you might even see me popping my head in from time to time. But this weekend is a tough one, Rick. I think you're in the States, aren't you, buddy? So where are we going to go? Where are we going to replace our Springbanks? Well, I've mentioned Ben Romack, the Springbank of Speyside already. That's a good place. But if we stick to regions right now, well, this one's already on the path, isn't it? This is a special release from the distillery up the road from Springbank. This is Glen Scotia. There's nothing that you don't know about Glen Scotia already, of course, but let's consider where they are. They've built their reputation, rebuilt their reputation, because Glen Scotia was all over the map in terms of volatility from batch to batch, from release to release. It's still variable, but it's not. The baseline of quality has been raised significantly. In the last decade, Glen Scotia has found its feet. It is now admired, and it now has a dedicated following. And now that we can't get our hands on Springbank, this is dangerously close to becoming a cult whiskey. Now, my personal opinion, there's still some work to be done at Glen Scotia in order for it to deserve that. It needs to move to being fully natural. This is Campbeltown malt whiskey. It's super precious. The whiskey that's been made there, especially in the last decade, the last 12 years or so, much, much different from what was made previously. Certainly much more consistently high quality, going into better casks, being managed better, being made better, blended better, everything. It's only got a few more steps to go to be ready just to reach out and snap that cult status. There's not many distilleries in Campbeltown, but that's changing fast. In 2004, along came Glengyle. We can talk about that in a second. If everything goes to plan by 2030, somewhere of that order, there will be potentially anything up to 7 distilleries in Campbeltown. So Glen Scotia's got a window of time in order to fortify that reputation and to step up and not just be a distillery in Campbeltown with mature stock, but a distillery in Campbeltown with mature stock that's loved, that has a dedicated following, and it has become part of the culture of Campbeltown that is just loved the world over. Some of you will argue that it's already there, and I would struggle to argue back. But I think that it just needs that last push. It just needs to move away from, price point whiskies. They have a place, they definitely do, I understand it. And it's fine to have these price point whiskies in your range. But I think that there's really good core range there. It's so close to being natural. Wonderfully exciting to see the double cask coming out all natural, the rum cask finish. It's going to be more interesting to see more of that happening in the future. Whiskey Vault is suggesting, I think they are there indeed. Let me talk about, this is going to be noisy in the mic. I might mute this as I unwrap this. Let me talk about the other Campbeltown distillery, the one that was founded in 2004. And I know what you're saying, Roy, it's just as rare as Springbank. I think it's changing. It's softening a little bit for Springbank. The 10-year-olds are not getting the margins, the profit margins for the flippers that they were getting at auction. It's not exciting to make £8 or £9 off a bottle of whiskey, I don't think. It's not worth the effort. I think it's going to change. I think what we're going to see is we're also going to see things soften even more in the coming months, because the people who are buying the Springbank 10, for example, to just have a backup bottle or two backup bottles because they know how hard it's to get, well, they've got their backup bottles now. They're done. The hoarding is getting close to saturation, and we'll start to see it, I hope, sticking on the shelf a wee bit more. Now, Springbank has still got so many markets to go into, so many more places to sell to potentially. I know I'm being naive there, but I think it's not under the same pressure it was. The special stuff, the limited releases, the local barleys, the long row reds, all of these things will still be in super, super high demand. But the stuff that we like to drink, I think, is becoming more available. I was away, I mentioned away for a few days with the family. Then I went into an Inverary whiskey shop. And what did I find just sitting on the shelf? Retail. I didn't pay a penny over retail for this. There you go. Just as my Kilkerran 12 is sitting with this much on the bottom. £45. Arguably, Kilkerran has done the fast track to cultism. It really has. It built a reputation through the Work in Progress series. People were already ready for it in 2017. 2016, actually, I think it was late 2016, when that 12-year-old was first launched. Instantly, it was admired and loved. From there, it builds a dedicated following, and I think that Kilkerran, the sister distillery, Glengyle of Springbank, already has a cult following. And I think it is slowly coming back. I know it's not going to be the same for everyone out there. Not everyone can drive through Inverary, or not everyone has access to these bricks and mortar whiskey shops out there. But I do believe that whiskey finds you. I do believe what's for you doesn't pass you. Somebody was in the social media on Twitter recently just talking about how he's just desperate to get himself a bottle of Springbank 10 and try it. He will find a bottle of Springbank 10, especially if you're a member of our community, because what happens is somebody will say, found a Springbank 10 today, it's here, and he can get it. Campbeltown's an easier one to talk about, but I still spent a wee bit of time talking about it, didn't I? My goodness, it's delicious whiskey too. Raymaster, St. Aquavitae. Here in Austria, Springbank 10 is already back on the shelves, but has gone up from €40 to €60. How do you feel about that, Raymaster? So that's about £50. If I'm going to be able to pick up Springbank 10 for 50, 52, £54, deal. I'll do it. I won't compare it to what I used to spend on Springbank 10. I'll compare it to the other products that are on the shelf at that price point. It's all day long a £50 bottle of whiskey. So if we either have it and pay its true value, or we ask for it to be cheaper and then we can't get it. I wonder how you feel about that, Raymaster, or I wonder if you feel it's too expensive. Hellswood is saying was surprised to see lots of Kilkerran 12 on the shelves all over the place in Edinburgh. This is nice to hear this. It's not just my perspective, my perception. It's other people too. Ian Bruce is saying, Roy, which 8 cult samples would you send from regions across the UK? I think that's going to be covered tonight. And I think if you wanted me to go into England, I would probably pick something from Filey Bay was mentioned earlier. I think it's a good call. Maybe something from White Peak. So Filey Bay is things like, Filey Bay is the product that's made at Yorkshire, the Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery. And White Peak is the distillery that makes Wireworks whiskey. Confusing. It's a bit like Springbank, who make Longrow and Hazelburn. The brand's not always the same as the distillery. But I think you're going to get more than 8 recommendations tonight, Ian. This is starting to fill up over here. Keep my Springbank and my Glen Scotia and Kilkerran down here out of the way. I was going to open that Kilkerran, but I think I'll just nurse this gorgeous wee Springbank. As we move on to, where are we going now? We're going to the Lowlands, another easy one. Whiskey with Molly saying I have explored indie bottles for the past year. So much better value. I agree. And even independent bottlings are getting more and more expensive all the time. So much of the community, I mean, if you think of the whole entire continent of North America, it's very difficult for them to get their hands on independent bottlings. Continental Europe is well looked after. But even when you find that it's well looked after, Ben, The people in continental Europe end up drinking something completely different to the people on mainland UK, for example, something completely different from the people in North America. And independent bottlers tend to work in very small batch or even as small as single cask releases. So it makes sense that that's the case. If you have access to connecting with a distillery that you love, a distillate that you love, or even an independent bottler that you trust, that's a fantastic source of exploration, as Ben quite rightly says. The Lowlands. There is a cult distillery in the Lowlands, and you can clearly see what it is by this admittedly sealed bottle. I love my family to come in and pour me blind drams, and they'll pour something blind and they'll bring it and they'll say, guess what it is, Dad? And somebody came in with a pour up to here, a huge pour in a Glencairn, and I went, oh wow, that's a big pour, but thank you. And I right away smelled it, and I went, is this Daffmill? And it was the last of the bottle. So my 2006 Daffmill is now gone. It's no more. It's going to appear in I think it's 2006. 2008, sorry. From this distance at least. 2008, yes. It's going to appear in a recycled review soon. This is the sealed Daffmill that I have on the shelf here, and this isn't getting opened. Certainly not tonight. You can see this has got a very special signature on it there. And this was gifted to me, this Daffmill, from Ralphie after the work that I did, or the work that we did together for the Oswas in 2021. So this is something that's going to be kept. It's bottle 29 of 222 here. So that if it ever appears on auction, you know who sold it, right? That'll never appear on auction. This will be opened at the right moment with the right people. And not because it's the best whiskey that's ever been sipped. This is really good whiskey. This is the one that he released in collaboration with the Good Spirits Company to celebrate his 10 years on YouTube. It's a 2006 single cask bottle, cask 43 from Daffmill. And I've tried it a few times, and it's a belter. So we have our cult distillery in the Lowlands. Clearly it's Daffmill. Why? It built its reputation. People were going to Daffmill in the early days and trying it and saying, this is going to be good, this is going to be good. And Francis kept waiting and waiting. Famously said, it's not ready yet, not ready yet. Eventually it becomes available. I think it first appeared on the scene in 2018. I think Daffmill first appeared in 2018, going from memory. It was already 12 years old. It was already mature, elegant, fruity whiskey. Very, very fruity, very yeasty, very fermenty forward. Delicious stuff. People went nuts for it. Nuts for it. Little did we know that that wasn't just a frenzy at the beginning. That frenzy was only going to get worse and worse and worse as time went on. So that's one of these whiskies that just fast-tracked like Coquerin, like Glengyle. So it went from its reputation through admiration, through dedication, and it's now instantly a cult whiskey. It's going to be impossible to buy it. So where in the Lowlands do you go? You might be surprised to hear I've nothing to recommend to you here. I will continue to recommend and celebrate Lowland whiskies from Lochlee, from Lindores, from Kingsbarns, from Bladnoch even, from all over. When I find things that are good, you've seen me talking about Kingsbarns on the vPub recently. You've seen me talking about Lindores. You've seen me talking about so many more, Lochlee and Bladnoch and so many more. But right now, I think we have either a situation where Bladnoch have gone from being ignored and neglected and shoestring type stuff to instantly premiumized. Great whiskey, but they still need to work out a way to show me that they've got a consistent product that's valuable and available that we can connect with. Right now, everything is just priced a wee bit north of comfort zone for me. It is good whiskey, it's interesting whiskey, but I feel that they've skipped stages there. They've just fast-tracked without earning. We need to be patient and watch. There's new products coming out all the time, but it's difficult to get my head around. Is this a transient product? Is this going to disappear? Is it stocks? Is it what's causing this issue? I think we need to try and get our head around something, and we need to see something at a price point that we can engage with. Most of the other things in the Lowlands, let's forget about Glenkinchie right now, for the same reason I'm not talking about a lot of Diageo products at the moment. Let's forget about Auchentoshan for the way that amazing distillate has been abused. Let's be honest, triple distilled Lowland whiskey. It's just the stuff that makes it in a bottle is just, it is truly pathetic, and it needs to get better. It needs to get better. Nobody's talking about so many of Beam Suntory's products, with the exception of Glengarry maybe and a few Lafroig releases. I don't know. The occasional Bowmore, it just so much of it is neglected. I feel so much of it is the priorities are wrong. So where else do we go in the Lowlands? It's tough right now. It's a region that needs maturity behind it, and it's not mature enough, not yet. You don't need maturity to make a cult whiskey, but you need things that are a wee bit more mature than the selection that we have right now, I think. Lots of things to get excited about right across the Lowlands region. What a renaissance that we're seeing. Come back and we'll do this similar session in 2-3 years' time, maybe less. And I think the story will be different. But right now, the Lowlands is tough. It's expression by expression. Love the cast strength Auchentoshan Valanche. You've hit the nail on the head, Phil. I imagine that's Phil. It could be Phil and Deepa. I picked up a comment earlier that looked like you've just killed off a series or something. You stopped doing your blind tasting or something if you wind it up. Anyway, wonderful content out there on the Whiskey Mystery channel. Please go and make sure you watch Phil and Deepa. They're amazing and they're great people too. But you've hit the nail on the head there, Phil. Auchentoshan Valanche, cask strength. So when everything else from Auchentoshan comes out at 40% in the UK, everything is just water. A pale imitation of the whiskey that made that bottle of water. Justin Wan is saying Japan does most things really well, surprising how they don't manage whiskey properly. Yeah. So many elegant, lovely expressions coming out of Japan, even that you each year have at 45%. Listen, it's still, they do manage to make an incredible whiskey. Wee bit pricey, 70, 75 pounds, but terrific stuff. Just eight bottles left in the blind. That's what it is. So you're winding it down now. You're not building it up again. When the 8 bottles are gone, they're gone. I guess when you get down to 2 bottles left, you've got 50-50, you know what they are. And the last bottle, it's not blind anymore. Amazing. But what a journey you've had, guys. What a journey you've had. It's a pleasure to be a witness to it. Rick is saying, too many time zones travelled today. Must hit the pillow. Thanks for all the Glasgow suggestions, Sparflies. Have a great evening all. Rick, I hope that the jet lag treats you well and you wake up tomorrow bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and hope the weather treats you okay too. Ian is saying Roy is lag behind, classed as a lowlander. Well, I'm going to talk about that. I'll get to it, Ian. I'll get to it. Is lag being classed as a lowlander? Lag on the Isle of Arran is actually officially a lowlander. But tonight, I want to talk about it in the context of the islands. I've maybe missed a beat there, actually, Ian. It should have been something that maybe I considered to suggest would have been a bit of a dark horse for the Lowlands. But I will talk about lag a wee bit later. And Peter Lay saying Cult Whiskey, Springbank, Kleinleash, Imperial, Daft Mill. Peter's just appeared from work and he's just scattergunning so many of the names that probably two of them I've already spoken about, and one I may be speaking about a wee bit later. Anyway, let's move on as I finish my wee Springbank. So many of the cult whiskies, you notice a pattern we're not able to buy. If it's the true definition of a cult whiskey, we're not able to buy it through genuine, earned, deserved success. 2 dirty glasses. I've got 4 more to go. Why am I pouring 6 tonight? Well, I'll keep the pours small, and I am not driving tomorrow morning. I love it when I'm not reliant on school runs on a Friday. Whiskey Wookie has been a member from Aquavida Barflies for 23 months, and he's saying, finally, got signal in the Caribbean Sea on a dinghy. No way. Whiskey Wookie is out in a dinghy in the Caribbean, tuning into the vPub, you superstar. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Late to the show, better than never. Cheers all, says Josh Pence, celebrating being a member for 21 months. Cheers to you as well, Ross. Let's get something I can raise a glass to you both for as we move out to those very islands. And we'll start off the island discussion with something that took a bit of a beating in last week's vPub. but it's deservedly so. One of the true cult whiskies, one of the legends of Scotch whisky, one of the most loved Islanders, and that is Talisker. This is the 18-year-old, but I could have just as easily picked up one of the non-age statements, one or two others that I have over there, or indeed the standard legendary 10-year-old. This was handy because I had it out for last week's vPub, but of course we're in a situation now that the non-age statement Taliskers I don't think are worth the money. Talisker Storm, Talisker Sky, they're just not proper Talisker to my palate. I tend to find, okay, some of them are priced very keenly. You can pick them up for cheap as chips, £30, and sometimes below £30. Fine, you're getting some good Scotch whiskey at a good price to sip along with. It's never going to be a cult whiskey. It's never going to be a legend. It's never going to be anything that you love. It's just going to be good drinking whiskey. For me, you would have to start, look at the 45.8%. Most of it is 45.8% still. 10-year-old and beyond. 10-year-old, bizarrely, is still very affordable, whereas the 18-year-old has just shot right out of our price range. I bought this back when it was only £78, and this won't be replaced when it's finally drained. And will I miss it? Probably not. Why? Because there's still a wee number 3 on it from last week. Because there's so much out there in the islands to replace it with already. Talisker should really be looking over their shoulder and saying, my goodness, we've got a very, very short space of time before we have lots of new competition in the single malt sector. But they're not behaving that way right now. So maybe they're making hay while the sun shines, or maybe they're stealing from Scotch whisky's future. Maybe they're stealing from their own future. I don't know. I'm not in business. I just bang my gums about whisky. Let's pick up the obvious one. Say this is far too young to judge right now, Torravik, but it's very promising. This is the Glen. I've got the 2017 over there as well. This is already decent whiskey, but you can see I'm not even past the shoulder on this one, so I'm not loving this. This is very young, very spirit forward, but you can tell that it's going to be good. I'd like to see some more mature stuff starting to come out from Torravik, some developments to happen there. What I'm seeing on the shelf just now looks very much like this, and I'm worried that I'll just end up buying another bottle of the same type. Remember, new whiskey, we're enjoying seeing the development. We're able to try it at a very young age and see it building year by year, snapshot by snapshot. That's a privilege and something that we need to enjoy. I'm excited about Torravik, and I mention it because they are literally on Talisker's doorstep on the Isle of Skye. And yet Talisker are behaving like they have no competition whatsoever. There's lots of places I could have gone in the islands. We could have gone across to Arran, of course, my producer of the year, all these whiskies behind me here that I love dearly. I think that if you look about community, the community that builds around whiskey, look at the Springbank Society, look at Friends of Bruichladdich, look at Arran, look at the White Stags, an invested, vibrant community. So it's transcended. The reputation has built that adoration, that's built that community. So it's built that dedication. So they've got one step away. They've got a 25-year-old product out now, and it's gorgeous. By the way, if you're in the market for a 25-year-old product, you can still pick it up for $295, something $275. One of the best value 25-year-old products that's out there just now. Gorgeous. Arran are very close to becoming a cult whiskey. The community is around it, everybody. It's becoming more mature, more consistent. It's getting better and better and better as time goes on. Yes, 12 years ago, you'd have been a wee bit worried about buying an Arran. You would have been worried about consistency in the casks that it came from. These days are gone. Arran has got over the barrier. Arran is bringing better and better stuff all the time. You see the celebration of people behind Arran in the Oswas, and the community generally, and you see me talking about it as my producer of the year. I can't see past it. So they invest in a distillery in the Lowlands, but it's on their island. And I wasn't sure about this. I wasn't sure about the first one I bought. I wasn't sure about this. But I like this whiskey. I like this whiskey because it is like nothing else I have on the shelf. I like this whiskey because I've been to the distillery and I've seen what they're trying to achieve. And it's not because of the gorgeous distillery, the cafe, the visitor centre experience, the nice shop, the great staff, just the welcoming atmosphere about the place. The thing that hit me was when I walked into that still room and I saw the scale of those stills. Big, fat, menacing stills. They're not playing the elegant game. They're going for something that's big, brash, bold, heavy, and oily. They're going for a true West Highlander, a true Islander, and not something that you can easily consider a Lowlander. It's incidental where it's located, but it's in the Lowlands. This is heavy cask forward. Okay, so we've got a lot of sherry cask on this. This is the batch 2 release that came out, 50% volume, 2022 batch 2 inaugural release. So they've got 3 inaugural releases. Their original one, this batch 2 sherry, and I think a wine release was batch 3. And this is ex Oloroso, and it's obviously lag, so it's heavily peated. And a gorgeous bottle. I should have polished this before I held it up to you. Now, this is expensive stuff. I think I paid £75 for this, and it's 3 or 4 years old at the most. Really expensive. I am not recommending that you go out and pay £75 and get a great whiskey experience from a bottle of lag. I'm not. I feel fortunate that I'm able to sit and enjoy this whiskey today because it gives me a snapshot, as I mentioned, talking about the Torrevieck, of how time is moving on. And there is not another whiskey out there like this lag that I can think of. It's big and noisy and shouty. The Oloroso cask is doing a lot to try and tame it, to try and pull it back a little bit. So we're talking about a powerful cask being employed to try and tame a really robust, powerful spirit. This is a compelling sip. Much more crowd pleasing, let's say, much more interesting than their inaugural release. But this helped me appreciate their inaugural release, batch 1, much more. Peat smoke's there, but it's on the back. It's not so obvious. So we're speaking of, we're not talking, Kildalton coast of Islay peat smoke here. We're talking about something that's a bit more integral, a bit more tame. So as this product goes forward, it's not going to be all about just whiskey flavoured with a blanket of peat. Not to suggest that the Kildalton Coast whiskies are that, not at all, but that's not what they're going for here. They're going for something that's bigger. You don't build stills like that in order to get a light, fruity, elegant spirit. This is going to be a very interesting whiskey to witness the development of. Arran is so close. Lag has got a lot of work to do, but it's set out on the right path. And the more you dig, and the more you uncover, and the more you look into things, the more you realise that they are, I think, stealing some pages out of that Springbank playbook. Not everything, but a lot of it. Whiskey saying that's how I feel about Lindors. The new make will make Lindors the most sought after whiskey in 6 years' time. Ben, you're not the only person that's saying that as well. I think that you might remember through the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend, I bought a bottle of the Lindors in the pot still and a bottle of Lindors in the Bonaccord, both to share with everyone because I had tried it just in the run. It was very cask story. That was the Oloroso Sherry one, you remember. I think it was 50%-ish, somewhere of that order. But really quite a compelling whiskey, a wee bit similar in style to this, but completely unpeated. I'm looking forward to it and I'm excited about it in the future. We might get to the point where we can say, do you remember where we used to just be able to buy Lindors? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think as the variation comes along and so many of these whiskies become of a much higher reputation, they become loved, they become the things to draw a dedicated following, and they start to flirt with the idea of being cult whiskies. I think there's going to be so many of them out there that there's going to be a chance that we can pick up more and more in the future. Eric has bought me a dram to say class break check in, and so he's probably teaching yoga, Eric. And love to you, Roy, and the Barflies. The only cult I'm interested in is the vPub, and I know Jimmy Legg has that Brora Kool-Aid. I'll be drinking. Wow. Eric Cunliffe and Jimmy Legg, both in Canada. They are quite a distance between them, though. But Eric, it's nice for you to drop in mid yoga break and hang out with us for a wee while and buy me a nice dram while you do so. Cheers, buddy. Cheers to you. Really one of the most enjoyable, ridiculously young whiskies. What a turnaround from the first sip I had of lag. Quite amazing. Always stay open minded. Always reserve the right to change your mind at the drop of a hat. Whiskey does that to you. Falscraft is saying, what are you thinking of the possibility of a cult around the really remote and hard to reach places like Barra? Listen, it doesn't matter how remote, how hard to reach it is. If we keep it in the context of Arran, Arran is away out on the west coast. You need to take a ferry to get to Arran. And I'm not speaking about a very short 2-minute ferry. It's a considerable ferry. You can sit down on the ferry to Arran and have something to eat and a drink and catch up on emails and things. It's a considerable commute. And yet, Falsgraf, the most visited distillery in the entire landscape of Scotch whisky production is Lochranza in the north of Arran by a considerable margin. If you make the product, they will come. If you're thinking about us to be able to drink it, it doesn't really matter. The remoteness of the distillery, it doesn't matter. If Highland Park can be a global sensation away up in Orkney there, that's not an issue. But if you're talking about visiting the distillery, I think it does become part of the dynamic. But it's not a barrier. If people love it, if people transcend the reputation, admiration, dedication, and then onto cult, people will take planes, they will row boats in order to get there. Chester Yeo looks like a potentially a new name, Chester. I'm not sure. Welcome, and if it is, he's saying I think Highland Park has to be an island's cult whiskey. Maybe less so today, but historically, definitely. The 21-year-old bottle back in 2007 is a personal favourite. So that's me looking to the Mortlachs, to the Macallans, the examples that I gave you to the Highland Parks of old. Tell me now, if a quality Chester of that 2007 bottling of 21-year-old Highland Park came out today, would it even be attainable for you? Would you be able to afford it? I don't think I could afford it. So it's transcended, it's gone. It's not cult whiskey anymore. It's a premium whiskey. It's a luxury product. It's not for me. Graham Stewart is saying, what about the cult blends from yesteryear? Black Bottle, Stewart's Cream of the Barley, White Horse. I admit, Graham Stewart, it's quite myopic of me just to consider single malts and single malts only. If you love blends of the past, even the Black Bottle, Stewart's Cream of the Barley, White Horse a wee bit more expensive, Old Teachers, things like that, you can still pick those up for buttons. I walked into Royal Mile Whiskies in Edinburgh 3 weeks ago, and they had a selection on a barrel of old Scotch whisky blends. Some of them I recognised, some of them I'd never seen before in my life. All of them were £25 a bottle. The cheapest whiskies you could buy, some of the cheapest whiskies you could buy in Royal Mile Whiskies on that particular day were vintage whiskies from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. £25. Now, you're not guaranteed that it's going to be intact. It's still going to be, maybe you'll have some cork damage. If it's a screw top, even then you maybe have some evaporation, some level drop, things like that. Certainly, you're guaranteed the whiskey is going to have changed. The chemical soup that is whiskey will have changed during its life in that glass. But when you pop that open and share it or drink it yourself, you do get to sip history. It's incredible. What a privilege it is. You get to contemplate when this was first bottled and put on a retail shelf. Where were you in this world? Were you even born? It's just incredible to think about something that is still not done by a lot of whiskey enthusiasts. If you look over my shelf here, you'll see, admittedly, there's a few blends in there, but most of them are malts as well. You can see all of these in this shelf are all antique things. A lot of them are expensive to pick up now, but a lot of them not so much. Jimmy, spot on. History, what whiskey is about. Absolutely, it's a huge part of it, Jimmy, and I love to contemplate exactly what it is. This lag is fantastic. What I also forgot to do, I've got two more to do. Number 5 is dead easy before I hit the big one at the end. There's one in it that's really hard because I was just spoiled for choice. See if you can guess what region is literally spoiling us for choice right now when it comes to potential cult whiskies of the future. Process elimination, I'll tell you what number 5 is, and we'll move over to the Isle of Islay. Now, We've got 3 Caldalton Coast whiskies. All of them are cult whiskies. There's no doubt that they are. Lefroy has been a brand for over 100 years. Go back to Prohibition when it was given on prescription in the States as an example. So it was not only a brand, it was also an exported brand. Not on huge scale, but it was known, it was out there. All of those distilleries are cult distilleries, but I believe if I was to pull an example out of Islay of a cult distillery, it would be over at Ardbeg, the closest to Caldalton Church and Caldalton Cross. Everything about Ardbeg does scream, and if Christina's still in here, I wonder if she is, probably not, but it does scream. A cultish branding, everything, it does have this dark, mysterious kind of aura about it. But then when you visit there, it's actually a really warm and welcoming place to go. I recommend it to everybody. It's quite a fantastic visitor experience, honestly. What a turnaround in 20 years from, I imagine, the ruins that they picked it up when Glenmorangie first took over ownership in the late 90s. Kind of jarring against a lot of the branding that they seem to. Let's differentiate between the core range of Ardbeg and the special releases. The special releases are not easy to connect with. If you're a cultist, if you're a collector, if you love Ardbeg beyond all else, you'll buy those releases every year, and you have to. Even the most ardent, invested, crazy horse fan will be disappointed by recent Ardbeg special releases. There's just nothing. If you pick up the 10-year-old at £55, £50, and it blows those away, those special releases. What are we doing? Why are we queuing up to buy these things? We don't know what age they are. We know that there's a cool concept behind many of them. That's great. It's very interesting. But you want to charge me how much to participate in it? It's a bit much. And what you're actually doing is paying for, I think, the effort that went into making that experiment, that special release, all the marketing, everything else that goes around it. And you're paying it because the people behind Ardbeg know that they have that cultish following and that people will buy it. But this stuff is sitting there on retail shelves and people are just picking it up and enjoying it. The core range of Ardbeg, Corryvreckan, yes, even Ugadal. Yes, I know it's not as good as it used to be back in the day, and we all talk about it. And those older stocks are all gone now. They've all been vatted away into the original Ugadals and all of these great things. Ugadal remains a rock solid product. Decent value too, great ABV, great presentation. Even their standard 5-year-old and 10-year-old are naturally presented products at great prices and good quality. One you might prefer over the other, fine. But nobody's complaining about paying through the nose for Ardbeg 10. This is a fantastic product. It remains a fantastic product, and hats off to them. So where do you go on Islay? Ardnahoe, we hear good things. The reputation is there, but it's just a reputation with a very small R because they haven't released a single product yet. I've tasted it. What I got to taste was resplendent, but we don't know what everything that they're going to release is going to taste like. Caol Ila, really arguably one of the biggest cult products that's out there. Quite amazing how much Caol Ila is made and enjoyed and drunk. Bunnahabhain, likewise, loved, loved, loved. It's admired, based on a very solid reputation. It has a dedicated following. Has it made it to a cult whiskey? Not very sure, not sure. Move over to Bowmore, already talked about Bowmore, enough said. Then we move to the west of Islay. We move out and we pick up Bruichladdich and Culholman. That's where the potential for a cult following, arguably if it's not already there, I think it is. Friends of Bruichladdich, Culholman has a whole community built around it as well, and I think they have already a strong love, a strong dedicated following. The dedication tier has been met for both. Has it gone cult yet? I don't think so. There's not enough maturity to either products. Now, I hear you, there's lots of mature Bruichladdich, we can't afford it anymore. The Bruichladdich that we're drinking today, whether it's in Bruichladdich form, Port Charlotte, or Octomore, is all still pretty young. As time goes on, that's going to get better. Culholman, the same. Best Culholman I ever tasted was last year. Fashil release, 16 years old. Amazing. Didn't get a bottle. Couldn't afford a bottle on secondary market, certainly, but wonderful, wonderful stuff. Donald Rance bought me a wee dram to say cheers round barflies. Glad to make one of the vPubs for a change. Bruichladdich and the Port Charlotte range is my cult. Affordable and still available. Middleton is my other at 50 plus bottles so far. Donald, thank you very, very much. Quite amazing wee segue you've given me there as you bought me that dram too. Cheers, Donald. Thank you, my friend. It's not Port Charlotte that I have here. This is a beer barley Bruichladdich, so it's unpeated, 2008. In fact, look at this. This is one of these bottles that there should be a lot less in this because I dearly love this whiskey, but I think I'm precious about it. I bought this in the year that I made the Magic of Islay video. There might even be a shot or a frame of it where I'm sipping, and it's this that I'm, and that was the one that I bought because it's the one I enjoyed most on the day. 50% ABV, as most Bruichladdich Port Charlottes tend to be. I think this is 50%. Let's just double check. Yep, it is. And this was cracking whiskey. In fact, I'm going to have a wee sip of this just to remind myself how oily and cereal and malty this was. Now I know it's suggesting that to me by telling me that it's beer barley on the label, right? But I remember just how pure and clean this was, and way better than any other Bruichladdich I'd tasted to date at that point. It's very floral on the nose tonight. Clean. Oh wow, very floral, lemon, perfume. There's a little bit of fizz to it. I don't remember that. The texture's there. It's still got a nice, good mouthfeel to it. But this is much, much more cereal and grass and hay forward than I ever remember it being. And I'd never remember getting that fizz from it as well. Let's go in and see if it'll have that again. Yeah, lemon bonbons, lemon fresh, lemon scents, floral potpourri, citrus, a wee bit of savoury suddenly, just from nowhere, and oiliness. Olive oil, no, like maybe fish oil or something, honestly. Quite a complex wee thing, as it turns out, for a 10-year-old product. Islay grown, Dunloss estate, this one. I hope that it focused in on that as I held it up there. Bruichladdich, I think, potentially is already there. It's certainly halfway between that, from the point of dedication to the point of kind of cultish. It's got such a strong dedicated following that it's almost there. Once it's got a wee bit of maturity, consistency under its belt, I think it is there. Can I take my hat off to Bruichladdich and just say thank you? Everything that comes out of that distillery is natural. Everything is transparent. Everything is fun. Everything is progressive by their own marketing. I hope that what they talk about, the ethics, the community policy, they're employing close to, I think, 100 people on the island now. Bear in mind that 23 years ago, it was closed. It had a couple of security guys, or one security guy and a dog. It's a fantastic story of renaissance. So it is possible to build these reputations very quickly, because Bruichladdich was like every other distillery back in 2000. Everything that it made beforehand, with very few exceptions, was for blends. Fantastic to see. Now in 2005, along comes Kilchoman. Now I mentioned Kilchoman in a vPub a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't always a fan. It was a wee bit rough and ready. One batch was good, the other batch not so good. That's changed now. The stuff coming out of Kilchoman is rock solid and reliable. Kilchoman is a buy blind now. You see a bottle on the shelf, you fancy it, just buy it. It's going to be a good whiskey. A good, heavily peated, classic Islay style of whiskey. Love the stuff. It's getting better all the time. This one, just incidentally, is a 10th edition, 100% Islay. I didn't pay for this. This was actually a gift from Anthony Wills. He wanted to send this to me when he appeared on the vPub because he heard me bitching and pissing and whinging about the 4th edition Islay barley that I did not, 100% Islay, sorry, that I didn't get on with. I didn't like at all. He wanted to prove to me that things had changed, and this absolutely has done that. This is a much, much better whiskey. One of 12,400 bottles, and excellent. The reputation is now building. It's up to Kilchoman to continue to fortify that, to make that, to build on the admiration that they already have, to build and make the dedicated fan base that they have swell as well, and they will become a cult whiskey. There's no doubt. And also a distillery that has struggled to make enough to keep up with demand and lay down in order to get to the point where it's got mature whiskey as well. That's been their problem since they started selling whiskey in 2009 when their first whiskey came out, I think. They're already there. Now, I'd like to talk about more distilleries on Islay, but honestly, the ones that are there, the incumbents, the long established ones, you know where they are. We look to the ones, the Portnatruans, we look to the Ardnahoes, we look to the projects of the future, if they actually, because let's be honest, Diageo are not going to bring a new cult whiskey out of Port Ellen for us. The only reason that Brora and Port Ellen are being put back into production is because of the cult status. So before I go on to my final region tonight, the point I want to make about all of this, the takeaway from tonight, and I think that the last region, which is obviously the Highland region, is going to hammer home, is this idea of how a cult is born. Firstly, it's born out of reputation, then love, then dedication, and then a cultish sense or air follows. But it's something that is therefore deserved and earned. And how is it deserved and earned? By us. We did that. It's not arrogant to say this. It's just fact. Enthusiasts, people who were close to the distillery back in the day, people who knew what their local distilleries made, the people who knew, the people who were close to whiskey, the drinkers, the thinkers, the contemplators, the people that were buying malt for malt's sake, opening it, sharing it, talking about it, the communities that built around it, the reputation that built on the back of it. We're the nose of the dog. We're not the tail wagging the dog. If we are considered not annoying, frustrating, gobby, mouthy geeks, but valuable customers with information to share for anybody who cares to listen, things will start to change. I love the YouTube comments that I get, but do you know the ones that I learn more from? The cantankerous ones, the ones that mouth off. Not everything they say. Often they're obnoxious, often they're idiots. Often they're quite offensive and I delete the comment without even caring. Only if it's a personal attack on me or someone else in the community. Don't even start that, I'll just get deleted. I don't care, honestly. The community is very good at self-cleaning and keeping it positive and good. But I learn more from the people who criticize. Now, it might take a bit of interaction and debate and a bit of mutual understanding to get to a point where we understand each other. But that's the role that we have as enthusiasts to the whiskey industry. We don't know it all. We don't. We're just stating our opinions. We're just shouting our voice. But often, even when we don't understand the full complexities, the full picture, our opinions are valuable. And I think that there's a lot of producers out there that just don't give a crap because they've taken our opinions over the years, they've put them in the back pocket, and now they're marching forward like they don't need them anymore. Could be true. Good luck to them. But we do feel a wee bit betrayed, don't we? We've invested in this emotional thing that is whiskey, and we do find ourselves smarting a little bit. This community is here. I am here. Everything that we do is here to make that easier, to find other places to go. Let me give you a great example. This is here for now. How long do you think this is going to be here? How long do we think that this is going to be an affordable product from Diageo, given the fact that Oban has gone from £48 to £70 odd. That Lagavulin is now up at 80 and north of £80. The Talisker 18 is more than doubled in price overnight in the last during the course of 2022. They're telling us, continually telling us, they're messaging us with everything that they do. Every new special releases that comes out, they're telling us what they're going to do. When they announce that they're not going to give malt to anybody else, they're telling us what they're doing. That we know what their strategy is going forward. We need to react. I'm not buying any more of this, and you know how much I love Clynelish. You know how much I love it. I'm done. This is good value, but I'm not buying any Flora and Faunas. I'm not buying any Johnny Walkers. I'm not buying anything affordable, anything premium, anything expensive. I bought that Lagavulin 12 cast strength specifically for a purpose on the vPub that I used last week. And I'm not buying any more. I'm not going to be this pathetic little part of the relationship that just kind of follows up behind like a little soggy-eyed dog looking for scraps from their table. There's hundreds of whiskey out there. Diageo are making very, very clear statements to me that they don't care about me. I am not their customer, and I have not been listening to them. It should not be a surprise to me today that I'm not their customer. And they're saying that to all of us. And I know that I'm sitting here speaking to you as if you are some kind of cult. But all I'm doing is trying to make you think. Clynelish is still affordable. Let's buy it. Let's hoard it. Yeah, let's reward their greed and cynicism with sales spikes on products that are still affordable. I'm not doing that. Don't need any of it. There's millions of whiskey out there. I think we should all think about what built cult status for all of those distilleries. Brora, that was built as a practical exercise for no other reason than Diageo needed peated malt. They needed a plan B if Islay had a drought. They needed peated malt if they had a problem sourcing peated malt. So they resurrected a closed distillery, Clynelish, and they ran peated malt through it. And like today, what we've got, we had Brora and Clynelish working together. And then one eventually became known as Brora, and it continued to make peated whiskey for a while, and then the peated levels dropped, and nobody cared. Nobody gave a crap until the enthusiasts stood up and said, oh my goodness, this has been left alone. Now it's available, it's affordable, and it's magical. And they started to talk about it. It built a reputation. That reputation turned into an adoration, admiration, love. It turned into dedication, and it became from that a cult whiskey. The reason this is £2 a bottle to buy today is not because of remarkable, skillful whiskey making by Diageo, not at all, or DCL as it was back in the day. They made a product. That product became incidentally good. The whiskey botherers started to talk about it. Then it became loved. Then it had a dedicated following, and then it became a cult whiskey. Now they want to bring it back to life and just trade on the fact that it's a cult whiskey. It's fine, it's a business, we understand. But if I want to go and see Brora today, something I used to be able to see for free, I need to have triple figures to join a tour. That is heartbreaking. What is going on? What is going on? And we are expected to pay Diageo for Smirnoff vodkas and Guinness and whatever. Just, my goodness, the company is communicating with us that they don't care. Jimmy Legg is saying that bottle of Brora is looking a little lower than I'd like. Remember, I'm coming. I know, buddy. Every time I look at it, I feel the same. And there's a huge chunk of that I owe to my pal Scotty Monroe, because he gave me a huge chunk of his. Service Alafis, that's my friend over in Norway. That's Andrea saying, I never loved Lager, Oban or Talisker, but the prospect of giving up Clynelish genuinely hurts and saddens me. Just think of the way you feel about Clynelish. Somebody feels that way about Oban, about Lagavulin, about Talisker. Genuinely, it's difficult. Whiskey transcends a mere product. It's a product of the people. It's the whole point of this idea of culture, of cultishness. That's what it cultivates in us. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, what? Brora tour is super expensive. Hey, I can't afford it, Greg. I'm not going to tour Brora. I think the entry level, when I checked, was, I think it was £150 for the basic tour. and you can pay up north of that. It might have changed. Don't quote me on this. I haven't researched it recently because, like I say, I'm just detached now. I just don't know. So we know what's going to happen in Port Ellen when it opens. And I'm a wee bit nervous about what Ian McLeod is going to do over at Rosebank as well, for the exact same reasons. Blair Stevens is saying for a while there was a reliable SMWS clean lease release every month, a solid 8 or 9-year-old bourbon cask at decent price. I don't see that continuing as well. We're all worried. We're all genuinely worried, Blair, about what Diageo are going to do about releasing casks through to the brokerage, independent bottling market. We're all just nervous about what's going to happen. Just after your fifth or so regurgitation of the stages of becoming a cult made me realize I am certainly one to be a dedicated follower, but I am not the guy to become a cultist. Good. But that's just because you've not found the whiskey that'll do it to you yet, Klaus, right? Jimmy Like is saying, whiskey transcends being a mere product. I knew you agreed with me. Absolutely, Jimmy. I absolutely do. We absolutely do. Let's go into the last section, which, my goodness, I'm 2 hours in tonight, and it was only me, and I'm still able to bang on like this. Honestly, thank you for indulging me. Well over 300 of you still in. The quiz at the end tonight will try to, in some way, recover some of the reputation I lost last week when I pitched the quiz a wee bit too hard. But I'm going to thank you all for not being too hard on me in the comments afterwards, and some of you actually came back to say that you really enjoyed the tougher quiz, and you were quite happy with it. Some of you scored really, really well. Let's move into the last region tonight to finish it off, which is the Highlands. You know the one I'm going to recommend is Ben Nevis. It's going to be hard for you to get. It's a wee bit of a Springbank in a lot of respects. This is an interesting one. I bought this in 2018, I think, on the back of a previous bottle that I bought, £90. This is a 10-year-old cask strength Ben Nevis, £90. I tasted it in the Dram. I think it was at the Whiskey Club. Bought the bottle, £90. It's just so worth it. Fantastic whiskey, incredible whiskey. Forget about the stats on the bottle. Forget about the 10-year age statement. Ben Nevis, this cask strength bottle, this batch one cask strength was fabulous. I bought the bottle, drained it, got rid of it. Thought, well, I'll never have that again. In a festival late in the year, I think, 2018, it was up in Stirling. I'm sure it was the Stirling Alhambra Festival. I found a bottle there for sale by the retailer that was on that day. 100 quid, too expensive, but I bought it. And it's here. One day I'm going to open this and I'm going to share it with some folk who I know that will appreciate it. But your standard Ben Nevis is still available. It's been rebranded a little bit. Yes, it suffers from batch issues, but Ben Nevis, no doubt, has transcended that. Love to dedication to cultish following, especially for certain vintages when they were experimenting in the 1990s and things like that. These have really gone into being quite cultish whiskies. But the standard stuff has the ability to be that already. Let's go with some other ones that I believe could be that in the future. The first three have got some work to do. The next three are already there, in my opinion. This is already happening. There's changes happening at Fettercairn right now. Not enough changes. The standard releases are all over the place. There's still a lot out there with colour and things in them. But these warehouse releases and the new 16-year-old, it's all natural, fantastic whiskies that really show us what's actually made and matured at Fettercairn, rather than the stripped and diluted and coloured crap that we've been getting before then, the price points, supermarket style whiskies that totally betrayed what was getting made at Fettercairn. And we thought it was a poor, lesser quality whiskey. That turned out to be not the case. In the hands of a capable whiskey maker, we have things like this, which is just fantastic. Likewise, a distillery that was, as Ralphie said recently in a review, what he deemed to be a bottom shelf distillery. Now even Ralphie is turning his eye towards Loch Lomond in the Southern Highlands. The stuff that's coming out of here, this is the ability to be cult whiskey right now. It's magical things that's going on in there with different grains, different yeasts, different cut points, different fermentations, different stills, everything different. The crazy thing about Loch Lomond, listen to the language, look at the bottles, everything that comes out of Loch Lomond, what are they focusing on? Distillate, distillate, distillate. They're talking and crafting as much flavour into the distillate as they possibly can before they even put it inside a wooden cask. Read the messaging, listen to the messaging. This is rapidly becoming one of the prime examples of a potential cult whisky for the future. And the Springbank of the Southern Highlands, if you don't mind me saying, Edredauer. Now, Edredauer was crazy all over the place. Oddball batches, ridiculously just things that you couldn't even tell if it was whiskey. It was so cask dominated. I think those days have gone now. The funky, oddball, crazy, wacko days they've gone. What we've got now is something that's much more balanced, even when it is a big, heavy cask story like this. Something that's interesting, something that's grungy and dirty and grimy. And I mean, calling it the Springbank of the Southern Highlands, I mean that is a very positive thing. You've already discovered Edredauer. You're buying your straight from the casks, and you're buying even your Edredauer 10s and things like that, and you're connecting with it and you're loving it. If you are, and then you enjoy peat, just blindly walk into Balakin as well. It's a fantastic malt, and it's out there and it's available today. If it's not already a cult whisky, it's very, very quickly on the way. Molasses Mike, good to see you, buddy. He's saying, Edredauer. And Peter is saying, we're calling it out for Anok. Aye, Anok isn't going to be mentioned tonight, and it could be in the lineup tonight because of where it's located. Aye, you could call Anok on the border between Speysides and Highland. In the Malt Whisky Yearbook, I think it's listed as Speysider, but it's not going to be mentioned tonight. What does Knockdo actually get listed as? Anok is, of course, near it. Knockdo Distillery. Sure, it's a Speysider in this book. Speyside, yeah. I wonder how they refer, I know that on the label it says Highland, but I wonder if they consider themselves a Speyside whisky. Anyway, there's one of the last three that I'm going to share with you tonight that I believe is the closest to transcending to being a cult whisky. And I'll save that to last. The two I'm going to share with you before that, I'm asking you, why are we not standing up and rewarding these producers and making it a cult whisky? I've been banging on about Destined for years, and with very few blips in their history, they've continued to bring us banging quality products at fantastic prices, and they very rarely skip a beat. Kentucky cask release notwithstanding. Okay, we know that that was an oddball thing. We believe it to be gone now. This is not the standard 12-year-old. This is one of my all-time favorite, amazing, flavorful, wonderful things. This is a cask strength Palo Cortado finish. 55.4%. Amazingly, this was my last bottle of this. And 2 years after this was released, I walked into the shop at Deanston, the visitor centre, and they had some on the shelf. I said, how can that be? He said, oh yeah, we found a case, or a case was returned from somewhere. And it sat about, and they eventually just put it out at retail. And I picked up another bottle of this at the original retail price. When whiskey's for you, it doesn't pass you, right? Incredible. Deanston, the spirit itself, some people don't get on with it, but for me, that super clean, wonderful, easy access whiskey that you enjoy in the 12-year-old turns out to be fantastic in any cask. You put it in an Oloroso cask, people are loving it. Put it in an oddball cask like Palo Cortado, people are loving it. Red wine, Calvados, Moscatel, you name it, they've been doing it at Deanston. And it finds somebody, it attracts somebody new. It's fabulous Highland whiskey. It's fully natural. We should be queuing up to this stuff. Should be hard to get. It is so good, ridiculously good. Take everything I've said and apply it to a much more delicate spirit and go east in the Highlands. And we've got Glencadam. Is this label not sexy enough? Is it just not cool enough? That can't be the case. Look at Springbank. One of the kind of laziest branding that there is out there in the whiskey world. Here we have very lazy branding, very laid-back branding, almost old-fashioned branding. But look closer at that label. Look what it says down there at the bottom. Unchill filtered, no added colour, 46% ABV and an age statement. Yes, they have some cheaper entry-level stuff. They are managing to pander to the supermarket through their American Oak Reserve, through their Glencadam Origin or whatever it's called. But for the rest of us, even their sherry cask Andalusia, 46% for us, 10-year-old, amazing whiskey. I've only got a wee drop left of my 10-year-old. I will replace it. Absolutely, it's a staple here. It's on the perma shelf. Why are we not shouting about this every single vPub? Why is everybody that comes into this new community for the first time not saying, why are we not saying, have you not tried Glencadam? The 15-year-old, inexpensive, fully natural. The 18-year-old is now back. You might know that Glencadam was closed between 2000 and 2003. It was mothballed for a while. That means that when Ralphie named this his Whiskey of the Year, there was none available in 2018 when he named it his Whiskey of the Year. So all the stocks, when Ralphie started to talk about it, people bought it up, and there was no stock left to maintain that momentum. Frustrating, right? But it's just the way it is. Then eventually the 18 had to disappear, but now the 18's back, and now the 21 is gone. But the 21 will be back as well. That 21-year-old was sub £100 for a fully natural 21-year-old Highland whiskey, and I raved about it on the vPub. Why are we not buying this whiskey? Subtle, too subtle, flavor profile, sorry, a wee bit too subtle for you. I think it's gorgeous. I think if you spend your time with it, it's so clean, so subtle. It does wonderfully well in a refill cask. The the uh, the vatings tend to be mix of first fill and refill. That 18-year-old was one of those sublime, clean, pure whiskies that I loved. I've got an old bottle of 18-year-old. I'll leave it, and when the new one comes out, I'll be able to do a comparison, try them side by side. I guarantee there's every chance that they're going to be different, but they'll both be amazing. Some secrets need to be kept, says Molasses. Here's the thing, and this is a thing, Mike, and I know that it's tongue in cheek and you're having a wee joke there. I know what you're saying, but there is some truth in it. There's a nervousness that we want to kind of keep it for ourselves. The more we make a success of the best products, the more it opens up a vacuum of space for more people to come in and make more best products. The more spring banks there are that we cannot buy, the more people will look and say, why are we selling this muck? Why don't we do what they're doing and make good stuff and make more of it? Quality over quantity, always. I'm just a geek. I'm an enthusiast. I know I'm at the jaggy edge of things. Probably most of you that are in here tonight are too. But it's what we love, isn't it? And it's not because we've picked it up and we decide, oh, this is quite nice. We are drinking dozens and hundreds of whiskies over our whiskey journeys. Some of us, thousands of whiskies. We know our way around a glass of whiskey at that point. We know what we love. Peter Lay saying, I loved the time spent with Ian Forteeth at Glasgow Whisky Club on Monday. That 1999 Glencadam was superb. That's right, behind the Bonaccord, Ian Forteeth found some of his own product. I think it was a single cask, a 1999. And he saw it there and he was compelled to buy a tray of them. He bought a round of drinks for folk at the Glasgow Whisky Club so they could try one of his favourite whiskies. Ian Forteeth is one of these whiskey geeks that's ended up being inside on the whiskey industry now. And after working for Angus Dundee for some time, he's now a whiskey maker for Angus Dundee, making the products that goes into Glencadam. Yes, Tom and Tell, and other Angus Dundee products. That's the two malt distilleries that they own. Ian Bruce is saying, would you consider having a vPub cult knockout tasting? I'm up for it, Ian. You provide the whiskies, I'm there. Rob Smith is saying, jaggy edge cult. Yeah, that's right. We are at the jagged edge. We are at the kind of really, really pointy edge of things. We have to always remember that. But there's a value in that. Oh, they're the geeks there at the jagged edge. No, no, sorry. There's a value in that. There are things that we say and do and understand in the way that we go about things. It's not the be all and end all, but there's a value in it. And it's just too dismissive to suggest, oh, yeah, the geeks, oh, non-chill filtered, coloured and things. What do they know? Chris is saying, I am all for rewarding distilleries for making good stuff, but I will never make the cult leap of unquestioned loyalty to a product. Good for you, Chris. I am old enough to know things always change. As soon as we nail our colours to a mask, and that is the thing. That is the one of the takeaways that we have to remember about tonight. It's about community. It's about knowledge. It's about the geeks and the enthusiasts. It's about all of those things, but it's about staying open-minded. And as soon as we become loyal to a product, we lay ourselves open, as Everwind quite rightly points out. If it's at the point that we cannot see past our brand, they will put lesser quality product in the bottle and they will charge us more for it. And it will get to the point of stupidity, open wallet surgery because of our naivety, because of our blind loyalty. And TF is saying, I love the stream, but wow, you encourage me to buy more whiskey. Listen, TF, I hope that that is what I do. Honestly, I hope I encourage everyone to buy whiskey, but not just go out and buy whiskey. I hope I encourage you to buy less bottles, be more discerning. Like I said, I keep repeating myself, quality over quantity. Ralphie says the same thing. We all do. Be more discerning. Buy whiskey by all means, but buy things that you truly love, that you enjoy, that you want to share, and that you're not going to regret sitting on your shelf. It doesn't give you anxiety looking at it every time you look at it and see, oh, it's a waste of money. This bottle of whiskey cost me more than it's worth. That's happening too often. And it's a lot to do with brand loyalty. We have to be aware that we can slide into that cultish side of things. Ian Bruce, I watched Ian Buxton hold his hands up and thank Ralphie for making him revisit Aaron again after writing it off years ago. Shouldn't it take years? Ian Buxton's a writer. He writes about whiskey. His life is in whiskey. Fair play to Ralphie and fair play to Ian for holding his hand up and saying it was Ralphie that led him. Ralphie's been doing things for 13 or 14 years now, and it's only now that people like Nick Morgan and Ian Buxton and the establishment are saying, now we can see what this guy's doing. He's doing a good thing. Consider the impact that Ralphie's had in his time, how the people that he's brought into whiskey by making it less, less, less pretentious, just accessible, like in a nice place to be. It's like speaking to somebody in your family when you listen to Ralphie. Think of what he's done for Scotch whisky and think about what he's done for Scotland. Think about what he's done for understanding and education and things. It's fascinating to me. Blackfen is saying, what you just said about Springbank applies in reverse to Edredar. To be more like Springbank, they'd have to dilute more of their product down to 46% rather than selling it at cask strength. Yeah, it's down to their mission. It's down to how they see themselves, what they want to do, what the facilities that they have, all of it. I think that Springbank have managed to do something that we've accepted as a good balance. They have cask strength releases and they've 46% release. I don't think they have much in between. That's the Springbank way. And you could do a lot worse than following that. Edredar are maybe going to find another way, their unique way that works best with their spirit, their setup, whatever they want to do. We shouldn't write it off for not following Springbank exactly. But I do think that what Edredar need to do is Springbank have a good solid rock of an anchor. They have that core range there. And then all around it, they have the periphery of the local barleys, the long row reds, all the other playful things that they do, even single casks and things. Edredar is okay. They have the 10-year-old, they have the Caledonia, they have a few staples there, but I think that's what they need to build. They need to fortify that kind of core range, that anchor, so that people can come in and process it and understand it and see it as a landscape, as a selection, and then explore based on that. Just my thoughts and opinion. Daniel Williams is saying off to bed now, past 1 a.m. here. Daniel over in the Netherlands, you'll not be staying for the quiz tonight. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I'll finish off with the one that you thought I was going to start tonight with, the one that I talk about regularly. I used it last week in the comparison up against Talisker and Leadchick 18, and people were shocked that I was using a 5-year-old whiskey in that lineup. Nobody, even although the 45 budget bottling came last in everybody's lineup, none of them, they were incredulous that it could be so narrow a margin between the two. And this is 5 and 6-year-old whiskey in this bottle here. This topic was brought forward tonight and inspired by a discussion I had with somebody who tunes into the vPub as they drive around Speyside in their car. He works offshore often and he has an independent voice out there. I won't mention his name in case he doesn't want it mentioned, but his throwaway comment was Ardnamurchan are fast on their way to achieving cult status. And I just had a little smile to myself and I thought, that's perfect. It's just perfect thought. It reinforced to me that this idea, this concept that something can transcend reputation, love, admiration, dedication, and it can become something that reaches cult status. I don't think Ardnamurchan are there yet. Got a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of maturity to bring to the product. The future is very, very bright. If they can bring whiskey this fruity, this delicious, this complex, this typically gorgeous West Highland style at such a young age, the future is bright for us all. And as long as they don't abuse us in the future, they we can witness this thing happening in real time. It's the enthusiast that's building their reputation right now. Ardnamurchan are not spending thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on marketing. We are doing it for them. I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. If they continue to build like that and follow that model and bring great quality product, their marketing team are willing and free of charge, like all the other whiskies I've spoken positively about tonight. Thank you for all listening to me banging on for so long. I do appreciate it. How can there still be 300 of you? And thank you so much. Ian Bruce is saying, I was surprised not to see Isle of Rassay, or maybe I missed it. Isle of Rassay didn't make it tonight. I think it's a very strong performer. I think it's going to be super interesting to see how it develops going forward. But remember, I could literally talk. We are so spoiled for choice, Ian, that I could have been sitting here for 3-4 hours talking about bottles that are potential cult fodder for the future, right? And Isle of Rassay would have been definitely up there. Peter Lee, Ardnamurchan is very much in every barfly's favourite. I think it's still new to the whiskey scene, but cult is definitely becoming for them due to the falling for them. Exactly, Peter, exactly that. Chris Pollock is saying, before the quiz, maybe some hints on the upcoming guests. I'm working with a few guests in the background. I think what the problem is going to be is I managed to grab a few when I was at the dinner a few weeks ago as well. The problem is going to be synchronizing dates and diary. And what I'd like to do is just keep it so that if it's like this subject tonight with me and a guest is suddenly available, I can push this subject out and pop a guest in. Keep it as flexible as I can with them. There's a few others. There's a distillery manager who's just taken over the charge of a brand new distillery somewhere in the Lowlands. I'll not say any more than that. There is a whiskey distiller who is got his own idea how he's going to handle some of the distilleries that I've spoken about tonight that we dearly love. And there is somebody who's an incumbent, respected voice and very familiar face in whiskey for a number of years now. When it's locked in, you'll know before anyone else. Joris van der Wiel has bought me a dram as well. No comment. Joris, I hope, I think that's the first time I've welcomed you in, but he's bought me a dram. I'm very grateful to you buying me a dram despite my significant amount of ranting about cult whiskies tonight, Joris. Thank you, my friend. Cheers to you. Gerald Cascane, or Cascania? Gerald, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name well. Long-time Ralphie fan here, recently started following you as well after visiting Scotland in August. Thanks for introducing me to Ardnamurchan as well as Glenwivis. Glad you're enjoying both of them. And again, like Rassay, Glenwivis could have been in the offing for discussing tonight. In the same air as Lag and places like that, that Glenwivis is going to be a cracker, an absolute cracker in the future. And Justin Wan, who's bought me a dram, not buying a dram, just paying my cult dues. Justin. Hey, how can cult dues be optional? Thank you, buddy. Thank you very much for your dram, and thank you to Joris as well. Thank you both. Right, it's quiz time. So now that 300 watch can drop significantly now as you all go away. I have tried to make it a wee bit more accessible, but still thoughtful, still challenging. I've still tried to keep things in the spirit of the quiz at the end. Remember, the quiz at the end is always a multiple choice. You're only playing against yourself. Please don't be intimidated by it. And remember that all the questions are intended that even if you don't have a clue what's going on, you can't answer the question, hopefully there's a takeaway and hopefully you still pick up something from it. It's interesting. I learn a lot from putting these things together. And Ian Bruce is saying, can I suggest Jess or Joshua from Single Cask Nation and to save the clash, the Inverurie Whiskey Shop? Fantastic, Ian. I know Jess, and Joshua and Jason from Single Cask Nation. I know all of those guys. What would you suggest their topic might be? That's the tricky part, isn't it? There are lots of people out there that want, and I want to have on the vPub, coming up with topics that's interesting and transcends the brand or the product that they represent to bring something that's much more inclusive, much more interesting, much more entertaining, educational, whatever it may be. That's what I'm after. See, before any of you parachute before the quiz tonight, consider leaving a wee thumbs up. We've got 172 in tonight. Sorry, 172 likes already, and I know that we've broken 400 people in watching earlier. I forget to leave likes too. The reason it's important to me is that I try to put together thoughtful content, and when people see the like count, they versus the view count, it reassures them that it's good quality content. And YouTube seem to be precious about likes as well. Anyway, it's time for the quiz at the end, folks. I know I'm keeping you all up late tonight on the 16th of February. For a lot of you, it's already the 17th of February. Thanks for hanging around. Let's roll right in to question one. Good luck, everyone. Which of these distilleries do not have an open top mash tun? Now, you might think, oh, Roy, what are you doing here? What are you doing to me? I don't know who's got open top, who's got semi-lighter, who's got full lighter. What are you doing? Look at the answers. Which of these distilleries do not have an open top mash tun? A. Chininic, B. Destined, or C. Bruichladdich? Good luck, everyone. My wee thumb is up, says Jimmy Legg. Thank you very much, you star. It's jumped up to 190 already. Terrific to see. Thank you. Sugar Kitty is complaining already, saying, seriously, please think. Please think. Imagine I had asked Sugar Kitty, which of these distilleries has a hammer mill and mash filter rather than a mash tun? Imagine I'd asked it that way. Does that help everyone? Craig G is saying, is this the content of non-chill filtered and natural colour? Is this content non-chill filtered and natural colour? I don't know about the quiz at the end, Craig. Yes, it is. It's definitely something. It's definitely full strength. But absolutely, Deanston and Bruichladdich both have open cast iron mash tuns. Deanston, interestingly, put a new mash tun in very recent years and replaced it with the exact same, which is considerable cost and not cheap to run either. But they did it because they wanted to maintain the quality of their spirit. Bruichladdich famously inherited one from Bunnahabhain, but Chininic is the one I'm looking for here. They do not have any mash tun at all. They have a hammer mill and mash filter, which is a completely different setup, similar to Inch Dearney. Falscraft is saying, usually I give a Schrodinger's thumbs up. Tonight it was later. Thank you very much, Falscraft. Schrodinger's thumbs up is one of Vin from No Nonsense Whiskey's famous sayings, that you get thumbs up on a video that you haven't even put out yet when it's a live stream. I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Managing international sales and purchasing of cask bottlings for comparing the podcast angle. Good suggestion, Ian. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for pushing for the single cash nation folk as well. Question 2, Rockandal 0.1.1 and 0.1.2. Both Rockandals released in 2022 were released for the Fashiel. But what were the vattings of? What were Rockandal vattings of? A, 3 different single malts, B, 3 different brands, or C, 3 different oak types. Fashiel, every year for the festival, there's lots of special releases that come out. Sometimes it's a distillery pick, sometimes it's an interesting experiment that's been going on, sometimes it's an innovative vatting or cask finish or all sorts of crazy things. But Rockandal were released in 2022, but what were the vattings of? Was it 3 different single malts, 3 different brands, or 3 different oak types? Cheers to the chat and cheers to the host, says Old Humble Distilling Company. Thank you very much for the kind words. Greg's Whiskey Guide is guessing B. Joris van der Wiel is saying B. Jimmy Jas, B, but guessing. Jimmy Paul, Lassie Hort Oatsman, B. Dancing Midgie Photography. Glenn, so good to see you in. Are you keeping well, my friend? Wonderful to have you here. How's your boy? How's the family doing? Malt Minion Chuck is suggesting B as well. Aris Moose is in saying B, along with Falsgraf, Nicholas, and Pete Head Frank. You're all absolutely right. You've guessed it right. Very knowledgeable crowd. It's not three different single malts. It's not three different oak types. It's three different brands. They're all single malts from the same distillery. It's the same single malt. This is a vatting of Port Charlotte, Bruichladdich, and Octomore. That's what made up the Rock and Dial releases. Now you would think Port Charlotte, wait a minute, Octomore, Bruichladdich, they're all different. No, they're all made at the same distillery. It's a product of the same location. By definition, it's a single malt. Banana Skin was there in case you thought that it was three different single malts, but it's three different brands. Justin Wan is saying, didn't you say you were making up for last week? 2-2 so far, though. Haha. Okay, so you're doing okay, despite considering it's a wee bit crunchy, right? I did have some feedback, as I mentioned earlier, to suggest that people like a crunchy quiz, but I did try to not make it quite as obnoxious as last week's. Question 3, which of these three distilleries have not released an organic expression? Have not released an organic expression? A. Bruichladdich on Islay, C. Benromach and Speyside, or C. Ardnamurchan in the Western Highlands. One of these distilleries has not released an organic release. Organic is quite a very, very specific, deliberate thing to do. There's a lot of admin behind an organic release. Really quite a difficult thing to do, and not many Scotch malt distilleries have managed to do it, certainly not consistently. Absolutely kicking it out of the park. An easy one for everybody. Bruichladdich has released organic releases, as has Benromach in the past. I don't know if Benromach still has it as part of its core range. Perhaps I should have checked, but I believe no right now. Ardnamurchan have yet to release an organic single malt whiskey. Question 4. Which of these official releases are made up, completely invented? A. Port Charlotte PC4, B. Kilchoman Uniquely Islay, or C. Bamore 10-year-old Dark and Intense. Which of those malt whiskies are not real? Which of them have I completely made up? Excess to Scotch is celebrating 3 out of 3, your beauty. Bruichladdich even did a D-meter, which is even kind of esoteric. I'm amazed at the knowledge that exists in our community. Helen is saying, isn't it part of a contrast range? Oh, you might be right. There's maybe a contrast organic out now, Helen, you're right, which suggests that they still, which makes sense, carry stock of organic malt. I don't know if they're still distilling it. I hope they are. Which of these official releases are made up? Port Charlotte PC4, Kilchoman Uniquely Islay, and Bamore 10-year-old Dark and Intense. This is splitting the crowd a wee bit here, a wee bit nervous. Port Charlotte, PC4, Kilchoman Uniquely Islay, but Bamore 10-year-old Dark and Intense. I can tell you that Bamore 10-year-old Dark and Intense is a legitimate release of very, very dark whiskey. 10-year-old age statement on there, 40% ABV. I'll let you join the dots. What kind of obnoxious little bottling is that? Dark and Intense? Well, it's dark and intense if you put it in good quality casks and leave it for a while, active casks. 10 years should do it, but I suspect that Bamore, you are relying on a big, massive dollop of caramel colorant. And if you didn't put that in it, the whiskey wouldn't be dark and intense. It would be pale and watery. Sorry to be so obnoxiously cynical. Kilchoman Uniquely Islay is also a legitimate release, but it is a fully natural release and part of a series that Kilchoman do called Uniquely Islay. Port Charlotte PC series started at PC5. PC4 is invented. Sorry if that's wee banana skin has slipped anybody up. Benromach do an organic contrast, and it's rather nice black vein. Of course they do, as Helen already pointed out, and you're right. It's a senior moment for me to have forgotten it. 4 for 4, Justin Wan. Quite a few of you are celebrating 4 for 4, I think. Ian Bruce Hell's Wood, Pedro. Good to see you, Pedro. I hope you're doing well. Too Slow and Peathead all on 3. Lassie Hotsman 3 as well. Question 5 is always a picture question. I'll let you look at it for a second. And then I'll pull up the options. Very straightforward. No ass hattery, no banana skins here this week. Just a simple, straightforward. Credit to Graham Fraser. What are we looking at here? If you're listening to this on podcast style as you drive along in the car or whatever, we have a scene. In this scene, we have 6 stills, podgy stills. with a fairly bulbous neck balls. They definitely have a very significant style. It's in a whitewashed building with red steel roof trusses. There are visitors mulling around. Where are we? Glenfarclas, Binrinnes, or Speyburn? A. Glenfarclas, B. Binrinnes, C. Speyburn. We're definitely in Speyside. Where are we? So I'm now sipping Ardnamurchan and Lag back to back in comparison with each other. What a difference. And then sipping a wee bit of that beer barley just brings out that really fresh floral side. Somebody's switching to the crowd. Falsgraph is saying, oh, I'm switching to the crowd and suggesting Glenfarclas. That's a good play there. I can tell you that absolutely it is Glenfarclas. The giveaway there was that we've got quite an amount of visitors here now, unless it was taken during the Spirit of Speyside Festival. Out of Binrinnes, Speyburn and Glenfarclas, the only one that actually allows visitors is Glenfarclas. And it is indeed Glenfarclas. You can just about make out, depending on the resolution of your screen, a wee Glenfarclas logo just appearing up here and down there on the still. But other than that, it's pretty difficult. You would have to do your detective unless you've visited there. Glenfarclas. Question 6. There are only, I say only, currently there are only 9 operational distilleries on Islay with mature whisky. But what do 2 of them have in common? We're looking for something in common between 2 established incumbent Islay distilleries. A, the same distillery manager currently. B, the same founding year, forever. Or C, the same water source. So just do 2 Islay distilleries share the same distillery manager? Do they share the same founding year? Or do they share the same water source? Oh, Craig is struggling tonight. He's saying, can we change the quiz back? Buddy, hang on tight. You only need a few more to make that 5 out of 10 pass mark. Knuckle down, see how we get on. So many of you, oh my goodness, this is gonna trip a few up. Justin Wan is saying C, I'm guessing it's Kalila and Laga. Well, Kalila is right up in the northeast of the island. Lagavulin is down at the very bottom. I think is it Lagavulin that uses the Solom Loch. Lefroig is the Kilbride Dam, or is it the other way around? Can't ever remember. But no, it's actually Bruichladdich, famously, and Bunnahabhain, both are founded in 1881. And they're both founded specifically in the location where they are to take advantage of the low-bottomed steam puffer boats that we've talked about in the past. So much of the distillery locations in the Scottish landscape are located there for a very specific reason, because of water, because of access to rail networks, because of access to grain, infrastructure, whatever it may be, illicit distilling sites. It's fascinating when you consider how a distillery can end up being where a distillery is, until you consider the history, and it just starts to make sense. 1881 is the same founding year for Bruichladdich and Bunnahabhain. Hopefully, if you got that wrong, I know that you'll never forget that wee nugget. Question 7. Which distillery recently invested significant money in Super Bowl TV advertising? I'm going to show you 3 distilleries here. You might be surprised. There is a banana skin here, but one of these distilleries invested a significant amount of money for a spot in North American Super Bowl TV advertising. Was it A, Lefroig, B, Ardbeg, or C, Bruichladdich? Greg's Whiskey, yeah, just saying, oh no, 4 out of 6 and sinking. No, you're nearly there. Just one more to put you over the pass mark and you're safe, buddy. So it's not Macallan, Greg's Whiskey Guide. No, it's not Macallan. I'm giving you a choice of 3 Islay distilleries instead. Not the faintest idea on this one, says Petehead, so you're going to be guessing there. One Glassman is saying this year. I believe it to be last year. Falsgraf is saying I could imagine. Saying C, Bruichladdich. Lots and lots of people suggesting the same as Falsgraf on C, and I would have to say that you are all absolutely correct. How can little Bruichladdich be interested in Super Bowl halftime advertisements? Because of the Botanist gin. They make more gin at Bruichladdich than they do single malt whiskey. It's a super successful product, and as part of the positioning they're trying with Botanist, they took out a Super Bowl TV spot. It was advertised extensively over social media, and it was talked about at the time. Quite interesting to see the Botanist gin getting a Super Bowl spot. Question 8. How many years has Bruichladdich been making Octomore? Hopefully you've started to spot the theme in tonight's quiz. With the exception of the picture quiz, everything has been related to a very specific distillery. How many years has Bruichladdich been making Octomore? It's part of becoming old, I think. The years pass so quickly, and you suddenly hear a fact like this and you're shocked. Bruichladdich has been making Octomore for A, 25 years, B, 20 years, or C, 12 years. Pierre is saying on the Simmerling founder year counts for Laphroaig and Ardbeg as well. 1815. I think you could be right there. 1816 is Lagavulin. Laphroaig and Ardbeg. Let's have a wee look at this Ardbeg label. See if it even suggests anything on there. 1815, I think you're absolutely right. Doesn't make the question wrong, of course. And I think $18.15 for Laphroaig, the super knowledgeable barflies. Superb. I think it was Falsgraf. Was it Falsgraf or Frank Petehead that got that right? It was Petehead. It was Frank. Well done, buddy. You're spot on. You're absolutely right. One in the middle says Craig G is going to aim for 20. Good strategy. Bruichladdich been making Octomore since actually 2002. So it's coming up on 21 years Octomore has been made for. So theoretically, I'm not sure this is going to happen, and it's just me speaking loudly here. I know nothing. It's theoretically there could be a 21-year-old Octomore. Quite incredible. Frank's handle is Petehead Aquavitae. Sorry, Jimmy. Sorry. Petehead. Yes, you're right. What was Bruichladdich's 63.5% ABV 3-year-old X4 plus 3 release? This was a semi-cultish release. It was a bit of an oddball thing that they did, but they did this thing, but they managed to charge a ridiculous amount of money at the time for a 3-year-old X4 plus 3 release. But what was it? A, it was a recreation of the ancient Usquebaugh ball. B, a rare triple distilled Islay malt. Or C, their first attempt at recreating a Port Charlotte style spirit. What was Bruichladdic's X4 plus 3 release? A, a recreation of Usquebaugh ball. B, a rare triple distilled Islay malt. Or C, their first attempt at recreating a Port Charlotte style spirit. Too slow is saying WTF. It is a bit of a cult whiskey. Barely whiskey, of course. 3 years old. I've got one clean glass left. I'm not sure how that happened. But into the clean glass, I'm going to pour a wee glass of Loch Lomond, this 9-year-old distillery exclusive Chardonnay yeast. B, triple distilled Islay malt, says Dancing Midgie. Steve Atkins thinks it's C, their first attempt at recreating a Port Charlotte style spirit. Pedro Meneses thinks it's a recreation of Usquebaugh ball. And Pedro takes the plaudits. It absolutely was. It was there. So the X4 was distilled 4 times. That's what it was about. I'm going to show you this. It was also called, the X4 plus 3 was also called or nicknamed the perilous spirit. The idea being, you might remember Jim McEwen talking about it, and you would attain heightened senses of clarity and all of these things by taking just a teaspoon. But if you took teaspoons, you would put your life in danger, and a third teaspoon would stop your breath. Something along those lines. It was that kind of legendary whiskey. Something that became, a cult whiskey before it was even made. And then when Bruichladdich recreated it, it became a cult whiskey again. 90% ABV close to when it came off the stills. I've never tried it, have no idea about it, but it was very young. I can imagine the price that they were selling it for, it would have struggled to live up to its price point. But that's considering I shouldn't even be saying that. I didn't ever try the whiskey. We are going to finish up on an asshat tonight. So where are we with the scores? How bad has it been tonight? XS2 Scotch on 4. Needs the asshat to make a pass mark. Jerry Miller is expecting an asshat. You're absolutely right. But Simon Oliver, good to see. And Simon is on a 6 out of 9. Gabriel Wilding is doing well on 7 out of 9. 7 out of 9 for Sugar Kitty. 6 out of 9 for Falsgraf. Wow. Oh dear. Pete Head, 6 out of 9. Pedro Meneses is also a 6 out of 9. So there's over 200 of you watching live, participating in this quiz. This is why the quiz has to be challenging. It has to be deserved. It has to be hard work to manage to pull together a 10 out of 10. I'm speaking from somebody who has never, ever managed to attain a 10 out of 10 on a quiz. We'll get Menno along soon so that I can have another go at it. What do you think? One Glass Man is saying 3 out of 9, not even the asshat can save me. I'm sorry, Warner, my friend. That's a One Glass Man there. Greg's Whiskey Guide saying 5 out of 9, so much better than last week. Roy, you've already made the pass mark, buddy. Well done to you. Sugar Kitty is saying, I love all of the assets. So many buttons, keep pushing. Okay, there is an asshat at the end tonight. I hope I've worded it a wee bit better than last week, Jimmy Leg? Let's see. Bruichladdich, around 2 million litres. It turns out that is the most common Scotch malt distillery size in terms of capacity, in terms of scale. There are more roughly 2 million litre capacity distilleries than any other. And I say 2 million litres, let's say plus or minus 10%. But how many are there? How many 2 million litre capacity distilleries are there? Around the same number as A, active stills on Islay. Active stills on Islay. B, Pernod Ricard Scotch distilleries. That is distilleries that are still under the ownership of Pernod Ricard today. Or C, editions of Ingvar Ron's Malt Whisky Yearbook. Can I just point out that this wee book is never away from my side? I've got one in my rucksack. I've got one that sits next to my bed, and I've got one that sits here with me all the time. Some of them are scribbled all over in pens and things. When I gift these books, sometimes I've got notes and scribbles all over them. The reason that the quiz is what it is heavily, heavily reliant on Ingvar Ron's yearly Malt Whisky Yearbook. I love that wee reference guide. I love that wee book. Weird, I'll say none of the answers. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that the distilleries, Scotch malt whisky distilleries, numbering in the order of round about 2 million litres capacity, is either the same as the number of active stills on Islay, which is somewhere in the region of 40 stills. B, Pernod Ricard Scotch distilleries, somewhere in the region of 12 distilleries. Or C, editions of Ingvar Ron's Malt Whisky Yearbook, which I think is 18 or 17, somewhere in the region of 17 or 18. And I can tell you that there are around a dozen 2 million litre capacity distilleries. A brutal asshat question to finish. I'm not even going to leave the 10 out of 10 up there because I think a lot of you would be struggling. May as well be C, says Peter Lee. Maybe I'm just going to get more tomatoes thrown at you. I mean, Jimmy Leg is saying 2 out of 10. That can he be right, Jimmy? Is that so? We're saying that this week's quiz was actually harder than last week's. I'm now panicking. I'm having an anxiety attack right in front of the screen. The theme for my quiz was to pick C 10 times. It did not go well, Aquaviti. Oh, that's so cool, Jimmy. So you've decided if it's going to be a tricky quiz, I'm just going to see how the chimpanzees would score just by bashing the same button over and over again. Oh, just so good. Pedro on a 7, fantastic Pedro. Malt Minion Chuck on a 6. Mr. CJL, good to see you in CJL on a 7 out of 10. I got a message or something from you quite recently, did I not? It's good to welcome you here, and it's a great score. A pass mark for Joris van de Wiel on a 5 out of 10, and Aris Moos is on a 6 pass as well. Petehead, it looks like, got a 6. Helen on a 6. Sugar Kitty, lots of people getting pass marks. Sugar Kitty on 7. Falsgrass, wow, not better than last week, 6 out of 10. Too Slow on a 6. Gabriel Welding, 7. See, these are the type of quizzes that make people want to make quizzes for me to participate in. We want revenge from them, and I understand that. 7 out of 10. I'm boycotting quiz time until I can copy off someone else's answers. Jerry, a 7 out of 10 is a tremendous score. Fantastic. Listen, guys, thank you so much. Peter is saying, and with that, I call it a day. Thanks for always organising Aquaviti. And to all of you, see you next time. Slanchiva. Frank, thank you so much, buddy. Thanks to everybody. I hope I didn't intend to rant quite as much as I did tonight, but I just went with it. I went with the flow. I'll maybe regret it. But there you go. It is now. It's here for posterity forever. And I hope that even when I get things wrong and even when I overstep the mark, I'll have the ability to reflect and mention when I overstepped the mark and when I got things wrong. But hopefully I've been able to encourage a debate or a discourse in order for us to discuss these topics and understand them better. Great quiz, says XS to Scotch, winking at me. And Helen is saying, super fun vPub this evening. Great chatting with the wonderful community, wonderful whiskey folk and barflies. See you next week. Amazing to see so many of you in, even till the dying embers of the vPub. I absolutely love it. And Whiskey Wookie is saying, it was amazing getting to see you while on the boat in Paradise. It didn't do so well in the woods, but it was still amazing to sit and enjoy a dram. Whiskey Wookie, it was amazing to get to see you while on the boat in Paradise. Okay, maybe you're talking about the Patreon post I did. I think that's what you're talking about, Whiskey Wookie. I think that's what you're talking about. I was freaked out there because I thought you were on the same boat as me last couple of days, and that would have been amazing. If somebody ever sees me on a boat and doesn't come up and say hello, I'd be pretty miffed. Pedro Meneses is saying, I love these hard quizzes, always learn a lot. Thank you, Pedro, and I hope that that's the takeaway. It's not that I'm trying to be a teacher or a preacher or anything, but it's just I'm trying to put quiz questions in there that if you get frustrated and you don't get them right, the chances are you're going to remember the ones you got wrong, and there might be something that's a positive takeaway. That's my excuse, and I'm going to stick to it. Listen, let me raise this gorgeous wee glass of lovely fruity Loch Lomond, which I believe could potentially have the ability to be a cult whiskey of the future. One of the Renaissance distilleries for sure. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me tonight, and I look forward to welcoming you all back for a completely different topic, but on a very similar theme a week from now. Until then, I'll raise this glass, tell you all that you're very dearly loved, and thank you. Slanchava.